Shabbat Shalom for the second time tonight. Or is this the third time? I think I only Shabbat Shalom you guys once so far. So this is your second for the night. And we're moving on from the couple presentations I did on the book of Acts and Paul and Kepha and the shrimp and pork and circumcision. And we're going to be delving into the Genesis Targum. And I think we're on chapter 5 this week. Hopefully, the goal is tonight to get through chapter 5 and 6. Now, when we had started this series several weeks ago now, I had commented to you guys and said that whoever came up with the Torah portions is sadistic, because the first Torah portion, the very first one, so when you get to the fall feast, you get to Sukkot, and at the end of Sukkot, and you roll back the scroll and you start again the next week, you're the very next day or the next week, you're reading uh, Genesis 1 through 6. And that is like a heart attack. It's the Widowmaker, because it, you have basically almost every single doctrine that you can find in the rest of Scripture. Some would say every doctrine is actually found there in the first 6 chapters. And it's just pure insanity trying to get through it all in like a 2-hour session. Like you just blah, 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 you take 45 minutes to read it all or an hour to read it all, and then you got another hour to discuss it. And it's insanity. So I'm glad we were able to do this over several weeks. And then once we get through chapter 6, I think it's going to start tapering off a little bit and becoming less hectic. I know this has been just a lot for me to try to gather as many notes as I have. And I feel like Michael and I have covered a lot of stuff, but I feel like we could do chapters 1 through 6 again and come up with all new material, because there's so much to be discovered in there. So with that, welcome, Michael, and I'm glad you could be here to join us tonight. And he will be reading from chapter 5. And I guess we'll split it up with 5 and 6. We'll do 5, and then I'll just let Michael lead off and give the first commentary.
Awesome. Shabbat Shalom. Yes, I will be reading chapter 5, and I posted in the chat, so let's go. And I'm sure Noel's the same, probably is way more in 6. I don't know. Is there anything special going on in 6? But than I do in 5. So let's go. Palestinian. This is the book of the genealogy of men. In the day that the Lord created men, in the likeness of the Lord he made him. Male and female he created them, and blessed them in the name of his word. And he called their name man, in the day they were created. And Adam lived 130 years, and begat Seth, who had the likeness of his image, and of his similitude. For before had Hava born Cain, who was not like to him. And Abel was killed by his hand, and Cain was cast out, neither is his seed genealogized in the book of genealogy of Adam. But afterwards there was born one like him, and he called his name Seth. And the days of Adam, after he begot Seth, were 800 years, and he begot... I'm sorry, I'm reading the JPS. I totally screwed up. Okay, so I'll just continue with 5:4. And in the days of Adam, after he begot Seth, were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. And he died and was gathered from the midst of the world. And Palestinian doesn't have all these. And I'll just read the Onkelos. And Seth lived 105 years and begat Enosh. And Seth lived after he had begotten Enosh 807 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. And Enosh lived 90 years, and begat Canaan. And Enosh lived after he had begotten Canaan 815 years, and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Enosh were 905 years, and he died. And Canaan lived 70 years, and begat Mahalalel. And Canaan lived after he had begotten Mahalalel 840 years, and he begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. And Mahalalel lived 65 years, and begat Jared. And Mahalalel lived after he had begotten Jared 830 years, and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and he died. And Jared lived 162 years, and begot Hanuk. And Jared lived after he begotten Hanuk 800 years, and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. And Hanuk lived 65 years, and begat Methuselah. And Hanok worshipped in truth before the Lord after he had begotten Methuselah 300 years, and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Hanuk with the sojourners of the earth were 365 years. And Hanuk served in the truth before the Lord, and before he was not with the sojourners of the earth, for he was withdrawn, and he ascended to the firmament by the word before the Lord. And his name was called Metatron, the great Saphra. And Methuselah lived 187 years and begat Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he had begotten Lamech 782 years, and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 902 and 69 years, and he died. And Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son. And he called his name Noah, consolation, saying, This shall console us for our works that are not prosperous, and for the labor of our hands, with the earth which the Lord hath cursed on the ground account of the guilt of the sons of men. And Lamech lived after he had begotten Noah 595 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. And Noah was the son of 500 years. And Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All right, I guess I am doing the commentary first. Let's see. Like I was saying, I don't have as much on chapter 6, but I will split it up. I'm going to start at number 5. So, or actually, what I just read, all these genealogies, and now I know why Noah handed me that first, to stumble on those words. But did you notice Cain was left out of Adam's genealogy? What do you make of that? Does this give more credence to the serpent seed? You know, I know in Jude, it says Enoch was seventh from Adam, but if you count Cain in that lineage, he wouldn't have been seventh from Adam. So this is just another example of him not being in the genealogy. I'm going to first start off with, I have a huge gap, so it goes from 3 to 22. So the first one is 3. So in the KJV it says, And Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness, and after his image, and called his name Seth. Palestinians, different. Adam lived 130 years and begat Seth, who had the likeness of his image and of his similitude. For before Havah born Cain, who was not like to him, and Abel was killed by his hand, and Cain was cast out. Neither is his seed genealogized in the book of genealogy of Adam. But afterwards there was born one like him, and he called his name Seth. Okay, so I want to focus on a few things. The 130 years, Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness. So if you remember last week, I stated the Septuagint said it was 230 years. There was a 100-year gap. What do you guys think about that? The Targum sticks with the Masoretic. I don't know. Why is the Septuagint way off then? So as I said, Adam lived 130 years, where in the Septuagint was 230. I also mentioned that I noted that Seth was in the image of his father, Adam, where Adam was in the image of Yah. What do you guys think about that? I remember a few episodes, I threw the question out there that, you know, we were trying to make the case that Adam was a light being, possibly. You know, he got skin as he fell. Is that in the image of Yah? Again, I have no dog in the race, but it's just things I'm noticing as we're going along here. So Seth was in the image of his father. Let's see. I'm going to jump to 22 because I don't have anything between that. Actually, I'll stop right here, and then I'll just do the 20s when I get back. So I'll hand it off to Nona.
Yeah, originally Michael and I discussed we were going to read last week chapters 4 and 5, and we had so much on 4. I'm just like, okay, let's just cover 5 next time, because it would have been, if we would have ended with 5, it would have been kind of a a whimper compared to what we had on the previous. And I think it's the same thing here. We don't have a lot on this chapter, and I will point out here. So there was so many different avenues that I could have conveyed notes on, or rabbit trails I could have gone down, and I had to really, with the time I was given to study this, I had to go, okay, what am I going to present tonight? And as Michael has already pointed out, the LXX has a completely different timeline than the Hebrew Masoretic. And in fact, the it seems that there's any of the canonical books, and I would include, I think, Jasher agrees. Jasher may be the only book I found that actually fully agrees with the Hebrew Masoretic Genesis. Jubilees seems a little bit off, And then you have the LXX, which adds thousands of more years to this timeline leading up to Abraham. And in fact, that there are other books, like a lot of the Adamic literature. I'm trying to think of specific books at the moment that they will agree with the LXX. And I say that the canonical because those were not brought into the canon. And I have you guys know my theory, hopefully, that I actually think that the LXX is the more accurate timeline. And for whatever reason, anything that was uh, there was this effort to rework, I think, a lot of books to the Masoretic. Either way, it's like, why in the world are the timelines so off? Why is it that when they were translating the Old Testament, the Torah, into the Septuagint, into the Greek, they're like, let's just throw off, all the dates. Let's just add date. Like something is really askew here. And what's also really interesting, I didn't plan to go into all this tonight, but I do want to just, mention this. You can see this in my document on the 7,000 year timeline deception, which I also made into a few videos where I go into more depth on this. But one of the, among the many anomalies that I found was that anytime you have specific dates of importance, they're consistent across the board. Like Noah was 500 years old, that's consistent. Or I think how many years Enoch was on the earth before he ascended. That's consistent. It's like almost anything where it's like, okay, people are going to pay attention to this. They kept it the same. And I don't have an explanation for that, but it is what it is. All right. Now we see here in starting out in chapter 5, verses 1 through 2. I'll read this again really quickly for you. This is the book of the genealogy of man. Now that's interesting because it is saying that, or the Sefer, that this was a book that we just read, and this goes with my theory of the Toldoth marks. We're just coming across another Toldoth mark here, and that Moses stitched together the book of Genesis like a family quilt from something like 20 something different contributors. And that really, that's one of the things that triggers or upsets some people. But he's clearly, if we're paying attention, he's sourcing other material. He's telling you, I got this material from the book of the genealogy of man. So is that another book that Moses wrote? Like, that he just, maybe it was like a little, like a booklet or a novella. They decided to go more ambitious with the Torah. I don't know. But it seems to be that that was a pre-existing book that he sourced that no longer exists. Let's see. Anyways, we're seeing the creation story again. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the third retelling. And it just goes to show that, oh, well, I just said that. All right. And it seems like if we read this, okay, I just realized I got distracted with my own thoughts. Let's finish reading this. This is the book of the genealogy of man. In the day that Yahuwah created man, in the likeness of Yahuwah, he made him. Male and female, he created them and blessed them in the name of his word. And he called their name man in the day they were created. Now, we've gone in here over this before, that Eve or Hava was not created on the same day of Adam. And yet this here says that they were created on the same day. Male and female, he created them. He called their name man in the day they were created. It just seems to me that this is more clarification in my mind that we are seeing a great number of people created on the sixth day, men and female, male and female. I don't know how many, maybe 12, maybe a million, maybe a billion. I have no clue. I wasn't there. But there seemed like there was a lot of people that were created, in my opinion, and that Adam and Hava they were uh, intended to be in a priesthood, representatives over them. And it seems like it's just rehashing that point here. And as Michael already pointed out, we see in Genesis 5:3, and Adam lived 130 years and begat Seth, who had the likeness of his image and of his similitude, which is a contrast. What it says right here, that before had Hava born Cain. It doesn't say Adam, it says Hava. Uh, like it doesn't say Adam begat Cain, who was not like to him. And Hava was killed by his hand, and so on and so forth. All right. So that's just, as Michael already pointed out, that's further confirmation that Cain was not his son. And let's see, what else do I have here? Okay, so we read here. I was really surprised Michael didn't come on this because it's pretty provocative. Oh no, he didn't get to this yet because now I'm jumping to 24. So that's correct. You know what? I'm going to give him the first chance to talk about Metatron and we'll go there tonight. It sounds like a transformer, but I'm going to hand it back to you, Michael.
I do talk about it, but probably not as much as you, so that'll be great. We'll probably complement each other well again. But there's one thing I want to bring up, though, that Noel mentioned in the Paul show, was that to take notes. And I just want to highlight that again, that we're going over a lot of material. Just take notes, anything that sticks out that you might want to ask and remember. I think that'd be great, and we can open up later and have more lively discussion. Okay, so it looked like Noel skipped 2, so that's pretty cool. So I went literally from 3 to 22. And then I'll finish this off there, I guess, with that. But on 22, it says, in the KJV, it says, and Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. The 2 Targums, I thought, were awesome. So Onkelos says, and Hanok walked in the fear of the Lord after he had begot Methuselah. Palestinian says, and Hanok worshipped in truth before the Lord. That does a way better job, probably, of describing who Enoch was and why he got translated. What do you guys think about that? That's a huge difference, but I think it fits. 24. So here's the Metatron verse. Like I said, I'm not going to talk a lot about it, so hopefully Noah will go into it. But I do have a lot in this particular verse, though. So 24, KJV, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Palestinian, Hanok served in the truth before the Lord. What is that? What is that? That's the Torah, right? Served in the truth. And behold, he was not with the sojourners of the earth. I thought that was awesome. For he was withdrawn, and he ascended to the firmament by the word of the Lord. Who is that? Who's the word of the Lord? There's a firmament. So there's a Palestinian, biblical cosmological worldview book. And his name called Metatron, the great Saphra, or great scribe. That's what great Saphra means. And Metatron is Enoch's name in, I think, 2nd and 3rd Enoch. So the first thing I want to talk about is sojourners of the earth. We are not of this world, right? We are walking as sojourners of the earth. Yeshua's kingdom is not of this world. 1 Peter 2 says, Beloved, I urge you as foreigners and strangers to abstain from fleshly lusts which wage war against your soul. I just love how the Palestinian says that we are, or I shouldn't say we, Hanok served and was not within the sojourners of the earth. We are sojourners. How do we walk with Yahuwah? We abstain from fleshly lusts and which wages war against our soul. I thought that was an awesome. We always in this channel we always say as above, not the as above so below, but as on earth as it is in heaven, and this is kind of the same way. Hanok was doing heavenly things and was translated. And when you're walking in the flesh, you're a sojourner of this earth. Okay. So Hanok, where did he go? Did Enoch die, or was just taken up for a short time? That the consensus is that he did not see death. Right. I'm going to share 2 passages that state he did die, possibly. What do you guys think about these? So Hebrews 11, starting on 5. By faith Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death, and he was not found because God took him up. For before he was taken up, he was attested to have been pleasing to God. And if you continue reading the context, it talks about Noah's story, Abraham's story, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, all showing faith and works together. Then you get into 13, and it's summarizing. It says, all of these died in faith without receiving the promises, but having seen and welcomed them from a distance and having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. Another interesting cross-reference there. They were strangers and exiles on the earth. But in context, it does appear to say that Enoch ended up dying in faith. What do you guys think about that? I know we in the John study we'd always talk about no one has gone up to heaven, and Yeshua came down from heaven, which no one has ascended to. Right? That verse. What happened with Enoch? Does that contradict? Is there multiple heavens that he went to? Is he still living up there, chilling? Or did he die? Which is what Hebrews said. Jubilee says the same thing. So Jubilee 7, and as Noel said, Jubilees is different than the Masoretic. And I've noticed throughout all my studies how similar, and I'm going to talk about it later, Jasher is with rabbinic teaching. They have very similar views. I don't know I don't know. I know many people in the Torah walk that do these studies on these extra biblicals that are still not totally sold on Jasher. There's a lot of great info, though. Me and my wife are going through it now, and it's amazing. But just to put that out there. So Jubilee 7 says, again, is this a contradiction? Starting on 38, for thus did Enoch, the father of your father, commend Methuselah, his son. And Methuselah, his son Lamech. And Lamech commanded me all the things which his fathers commanded him. And I also will give you a commandment, my son, as Enoch commanded his son in the first Jubilee, while still living. The seventh in his generation he commanded and testified to his son and to his son's sons until the day of his death. So there it is. It appears to be saying the same thing Hebrews did. He ended up dying. He was translated. He was brought up to heaven. First book of Enoch tells you what he was doing up there. But he ended up dying. What do you guys think about that? As I said earlier, take notes. Bring this up if this is something that's interests you. Okay, so continuing on this Enoch stuff. So Sirach 44, and I was doing research, and only a few translations say this. But Sirach 44 states, Enoch pleased God and was translated into paradise, that he may give repentance to the nations. Now, if you just do a normal Google search of Sirach 44:16, you're going to get something way different. Let me actually get the exact version I used here. That was the DRA version. Yeah, the DRA version. So that's way different than the other versions. I'll put the link in the chat to show you how differently it was. Let's see. Where am I? So the Greek word used here for paradise is paradisios. I talked about this a few shows back. It was derived from the ancient Persian word meaning enclosed garden and was used in the Septuagint to describe the Garden of Eden. Later, however, the term became synonymous for heaven, as is the case here. So I forgot what show it was, but I remember talking about that, where there were two separate words. Paradise, where Yeshua said the man on the cross was going, and then the Garden of Eden. And then when you get back into the Hebrew, it was basically an orchard or a park. That was the Hebrew word for paradise, was orchard or a park. And it seemed to be you could make the claim that it was in the same location, but they were two separate things. Again, what do you think about that? All right, so I've said this a bunch of times, but I love numbers. You guys know that. Enoch was seventh from Adam, right? We have 7 days in the week. Philadelphia, we have 7 churches of Revelation. We have 7 spirits. We had 7 deacons. The pattern I'm noticing is 1 out of the 7 is set apart. So Enoch was seventh from Adam. He was the one translated. 7 days in the week. Sabbath is the set apart day. 7 churches of Revelation. Philadelphia, the set apart church. 7 spirits of Elohim. Wisdom is the set apart spirit. 7 deacons. Philip, in my opinion, was a set apart deacon. He was the one who was harpazoed. Again, just wanted to show you that correlation. How special 1 out of the 7. You can keep going. The Jubilee is the 7th. Making your land rest in the 7th year. It's always 1 out of the 7th. Is that? It's pretty cool when you do that research. Do I want to stop here? I have 2 left, but they're pretty big. I'll hand it off to Noel here.
So here we are in the 5th or 6th week of our Genesis Targum series, and it hits the fan. We've stumbled across Metatron. And before I talk a little bit, and I'm not going to go too much into that, that's research that will take you into all sorts of territory. Before I comment on that, I do want to talk a little bit about the great Safra, or as Michael pointed out, scribe. Well, that's really interesting. It calls him the great scribe. So what was he a scribe of? I mean, we know it's first Enoch, but then look at this quote from second Enoch, chapter 23, verse 3. And all double 30 days and 30 nights. So it looks like it was over a 2-month period. So I'm reading double 30 days. So I'm guessing 60 days and 60 nights. I wrote out all things exactly, all things, and wrote 360 books. So according to second Enoch, and I know this is you can't say second Enoch without saying take it with a grain of salt. I do feel that when we talk about books being tampered with, second Enoch has probably exchanged hands a lot. That being said, though, it's a really interesting passage because it's connecting Enoch very much with an Ezra type person. When people think of Enoch as a scribe, they think of him as a Moshe. I see Moshe as writing 5 books, which are, very important. They came from the word of Yah. There was the Torah, right? But Ezra, we've been over this before. He supernaturally transcribed the Bible again after it had been lost. The Torah had been lost. Probably the most of the Tanakh had been lost due to the Babylonian invasion and their total rejection of Yah leading up to it. It was pretty abysmal, and so he comes back and he and his fellow scribes, they get together and they are able to flesh out the entire Bible again. And that's also very important when, the scholars are saying, well, none of this predates like the 3rd or 4th century BC. And I'm like, well, that puts us right in Ezra territory. Isn't that interesting? All that being said is that if he wrote 360 books, what does that mean? Are they 360 books or what is the writer here conveying? Are they 360 books that are attributed to Enoch that we've never seen? Or is this the total canon? That's kind of interesting because we see the same thing in Second Esdras, where there is, I can't recall offhand, but there is um, a great number of books that were holy books that were set aside, and it appears to be the same thing happening here. So just put that into your frame of thinking that Enoch as the great scribe, it is possible, and I am suggesting the possibility that he put down on papyrus or paper or stone or something the all the books that would eventually be set apart books. All right, moving on to before I get to Metatron, Michael covered this a little bit and talked about Eden and the orchard and so on and so forth. Well, this is an interesting reference I found in Tales of the Patriarchs, column 2. Quick backstory in Tales of the Patriarchs. It derives from the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was found there. It is a fascinating read. And this is the same time period, and it says Methuselah went to Enoch to find the truth. Now, the context here is an entire study that I chose not to do tonight. I do have a video on it and papers and so on, talking about how the birth of Noah was not an ordinary birth. He came out glowing like lights, like crystal, like fire coming out of his eyes. He was an angelic being. And the question being put forward here is, what does that mean? It seems like, according to the Tales of the Patriarch, the writings of Abraham, some of the others, this is kind of the other thing that's really interesting about Tales of the Patriarch, which comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, that the writings of Abraham has a lot in common with it. And it seems to imply that there was something very angelic about Noah. And it's kind of leaves us it's hanging open. We don't have all the answers to it, and that's okay. But anyways, Methuselah is going to Enoch to ask questions. Lamech goes to Methuselah, and I believe Lamech was not. He didn't really follow Yah's his ways. He kind of fell away, and at the very end, it was Noah and Methuselah who were still kind of going at it and preaching to the nations. Methuselah was a great man, of course. So he's going to Enoch to inquire about Noah, and he says, and he went to Parvaim, where Enoch lived. So Parvaim, it's Prvaim. I may be pronouncing that wrong, but that was kind of interesting. I looked at that reference. I'm like, well, where's Parvaim? And it says, he said to Enoch, "Oh, my father and Adon, to whom I tell you, do not be angry because I came here to you, fear before you." So for whatever reason, Methuselah is afraid that Enoch would be angry with him that he was able to access this place called Parvaim. All right. The only other reference I have yet found to this place called Parvaim is in Second Chronicles, and it involves King Solomon's mines. Yes, you heard that right. It is there referred to as the region from which Solomon obtained gold for the ornamentation of his temple. This is what we read in Second Chronicles 3:6. And he garnished the house with precious stones for beauty, and the gold was gold of Parvaim or Parvaim. Now, people have speculated, it's North America, all these different places. Well, according to, if you take the Dead Sea Scrolls, Tales of the Patriarchs, again, take it with a grain of salt. I think it's a really interesting clue that it appears that the gold came from Eden, which is not surprising because throughout the Aramaic Targum, we're going to see many things that came from Eden. Now, getting on to Metatron, I'm not going to go into, you know, all the rabbinical territory. I'm not going to go into Kabbalah territory. I'm just going to be sticking to what we find in the Aramaic Targum. And lo and behold, he only appears one other time in the Targum. His other reference comes to us in Deuteronomy 34, verse 6, which I will read to you now. It says, "Blessed be the name of Yahuwah of the world, who had taught us his righteous way. He had taught us to clothe the naked. He clothed." Okay, this is so fascinating. Okay, let me start again. He had taught us to. So, what is the righteous way? And this falls right in line with Yahusha's thinking. He had taught us to clothe the naked as he clothed Adam and Eva. So he was showing us how he felt about nakedness. He had taught us to unite the bridegroom and the bride in marriage as he united Eva to Adam. He hath taught us to visit the sick. That's huge on Yahusha's list of things to do, as he revealed himself to Abraham when he was El from being circumcised. That's interesting. I never thought of that before until reading the Targum. Going, he did. He visited him when he was recovering from his circumcision. That's pretty. That's a pretty cool thought. He had taught us to console the mourners as he revealed himself again to Yaakov when returning from Padan and the place where his mother had died. He hath taught us to feed the poor as he sent Israel bread from heaven. He hath taught us to bury the dead by what he did for Moshe. For he revealed himself in his word, and with him in the companies of ministering angels, Michael and Gabriel spread forth the golden bed, fastened with chrysolites, gems, and beryls, adorned with hangings of purple silk and satin and white linens. Metatron, there he is, Yophiel and Uriel and Yethithia, I can't even pronounce that, the wise sages. So these are all considered called wise sages. That's kind of interesting. Laid him upon it. And I didn't even think about that to just now. I need to look up these other names and try to figure out are they saying these were actual people on the earth that there were wise sages that became what we call angels in heaven. And I have reason for that. And I might talk about that a little bit tonight. And by his word, he conducted him 4 miles and buried him in the valley opposite Beth Peor, that Yashar'el, as oft as they look upon up to Peor, may have the memory of their sin and its sight of the burying place of Moshe. Okay, it's just basically saying that the one other time he appears in the Aramaic Targum, it's to bury Moshe. Now, this is kind of important because we're going to get into the writings of Abraham, and I'll explain why someone might be ascended to heaven according to the writings of Abraham. Kind of an interesting thought. All right, but before we do that, I will get into really quickly just a little bit of what the sages of old believed Metatron to be the same angel as spoken about in Exodus 23. Now, this is not me saying this. This is the sages of old. So this is what they say. And keep in mind that Enoch was clearly very much a messianic figure. There's no doubt about that. You see a series of messianic anointed ones in scripture. Behold, I will send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place of my habitation, which I have prepared. Now, we say this is Yahusha, well, let me keep reading. I jumped ahead of myself. Be circumspect before him and obey his word, and be not rebellious against his words, for he will not forgive your sins, because his word is in my name. For if thou wilt indeed hearken to his word and do all that I speak by him, I will be the enemy of thy enemy and will trouble them who trouble thee. So, obviously, just keep in mind, just so you guys are not confused, the Targum is not saying that that is Metatron. That's what some of the sages identify. But clearly, you see here that it identifies his word. We know that's Yahusha. So, all right. So, let's moving on. Let's see. Okay. So here's something that is evident. This also comes from the Targum, is that Enoch was not the only one to be taken to paradise. There were others. And I actually feel cheated because I was always taught that it was just Enoch and Elijah, they're it. Of course, Yahusha too. But the thing is with Yahusha and Eliyahu and Hanok, or Hanok, am I pronouncing that right? all three of them share some similar characteristics. They all came from the Melchizedek priesthood. And there were others who ascended to heaven. Now, the whole line of debate of whether if Enoch has already died is a whole nother question. But this is what it says: the children of Asher. Now, the context here, this is Genesis 46:17 in the Targum. The the 12 patriarchs and their children are now moving into Egypt. They're going to move there, and then of course we know they go into slavery. So this is referring to the children of Asher, and his children were Yima, Yishva, Yishvi, Berea, and Sarah, their sister. And this is what happened to Sarah. She never made it to Egypt. Sarah was carried away while alive into the Garden of Eden because she had announced that Yaakov, that Joseph still lived. It was she who saved the inhabitants of the city, Abel from judgment of death in the days of Job or Joab. The sons of Beriah who went down into Mizraim were Heber and okay, that goes on in there. So that's interesting. So here we see, according to Genesis Targum, another, this one being a woman, is taken up to heaven. Okay, but there's more. There's also the story of the first Melchizedek is found in Second Enoch. I've already quoted from that tonight. Now this is a long read, and so I won't go through it. But the first Melchizedek is not Shem from Genesis. He apparently this Melchizedek Shem was named after Noah's nephew. So before the flood, he had a nephew through his brother, and the son's name was literally Melchizedek. And after the flood, then when Shem takes on the Melchizedek priesthood, apparently he took on the name Melchizedek. Maybe Shem knew him as a child before the flood. I'm not quite sure, but before the flood, Melchizedek ascended to heaven. Long read. You can read it for yourself. You can do that digging, but it's there. Really interesting. And also the way it ends in Second Enoch, it's the same way First Enoch ends, where it has been well noted by this point that the last 5 or 6 or so chapters of Enoch are actually taken out of the lost book of Noah. And it appears that the chapters that in Second Enoch come from that same read. Why they were sectioned off that way, I don't know, but it's really interesting. So here's another one from the writings of Abraham. For this holy order came not by man, it's talking about the Melchizedek priesthood, nor the will of man, neither by father nor mother, neither by beginning of days nor end of years, but of Elohim. It is the order of Elohim, the Melchizedek priesthood. For it was established in the beginning of the earth by the Ancient of Days, wherefore it is called the order of the ancients. And it was delivered unto men from the beginning by the calling of Elohim's own voice, according to his own will, through the voice of his priesthood, unto as many as believed on his name and were faithful until they had obtained. Behold, these could transcend the veil according to the will of Elohim and commune with the general assembly and church of the firstborn in heaven, and many were caught up to be with them. For Elohim had sworn unto Enoch and unto his seed with an oath by himself that every one being ordained after this order and calling should have power by faith to break mountains, to divide the seeds, to dry up water, to turn them out of their course, to put at defiance the armies of nations, divide the earth, to break every band, to stand in the presence of Elohim, to do all the things according to his will, according to his command, subdue principalities and powers, and this by the will, the Son of the only begotten of the Father, which was from before the foundation of the world. Now, just a quick note here that these are all Yahusha's attributes. Also, notice it said to dry up waters, to divide the seas. Well, who did that? Yahusha did that in Exodus. He divided the sea, and he was of the Melchizedek priesthood. Kind of interesting. And men having this faith and coming unto this order of Elohim could be translated and taken up to the heaven. So again, I feel cheated. There's apparently this Melchizedek priesthood that many before the flood were taken up. And I'm not going to go too much more into that study tonight. I just want to point out that I don't believe Enoch was alone. And people get freaked out over Metatron, but I could give other sources showing that when Abraham was taken up, there is also, uh, and and I think it's Hebrews that actually says he was taken up. By the way, when he was taken up, he was translated too, or changed into like a holy angel. I mean, you can't pass by the firmament, go into the heavens, and still be mortal flesh. You have to. So people get freaked out by that. It's like, okay, but is it really that scandalous? Here's another thing we see that is contrasted between Cain's city of Enoch, which we read about last week, and the real city of Enoch. And there's so much dualism going on here between the sons of Cain and sons of Seth. And you actually can compare a lot of the same names. There's the lineage of Seth had the same names as the lineage of Cain, and of course the son of Cain was Enoch, which pre-existed the Enoch we're talking about by hundreds of years. Well, the city of Enoch was taken up before the creation week too. I believe this happens. It's one of the reasons for the creation of the firmament. So notice where Abraham places the city of Enoch in history. This comes from the writings of Abraham, chapter 100. Now, Melchizedek was a priest after this order, which is the holy order of Elohim. Therefore, he obtained peace and shalom and was called the Prince of Peace, which is kind of interesting because I believe Messiah was called that too. And his people wrought righteousness and obtained heaven, for they sought for the city of Enoch, which Elohim had before taken, separating it from the earth. So there was a city of Enoch that was separated from the earth, having served it unto the latter days or the end of the world. For Elohim had said and sworn with an oath that the heavens and the earth should come together again, and the sons of Elohim had tried even by fire. All right, that's enough of that. All right, so Abraham basically says the city of Enoch was on the earth at one time, and I want to contrast that, talk about dualism, that we're not there yet, but Nimrod also builds a city that is attempting to mimic the city of Enoch, and I believe that is what Cain's son was trying to do as well when he built the city of Enoch. And this is what it says in the writings of Abraham, chapter 2. At that time, Nimrod came and established the city of which is the city of light. That's kind of interesting. The city of light. That's what he called it. For he yet retained his determination to build a city to rival the city of Elohim, that the light and power might center in him. But then, about 40 chapters later, when Abraham enters the city, he says, when I appeared before King Nimrod, he was seated upon his throne in all his glory, but it was a darkness to me. So all the things that Nimrod saw as light, Abraham went in and he's like, no, it was darkness in there. So that's really interesting thought. All right, and here's what we see in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 8 through 10. By faith, Abraham, when he called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith, he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Yitzchak and Yaakov, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim. All right. Okay, so that's what he's talking there about New Jerusalem. Okay. But here's the little gem I found afterwards. This comes from Second Baruch. And it's as it turns out, and that's why I put this in here. As it turns out, Abraham not only sought after the heavenly city, it was shown to him during the night. So I guess I misquoted. It wasn't Hebrews where it was shown to him. It was in Second Baruch, which makes more sense. Here we see in chapter 4. And Yahuwah said unto me, this city shall be delivered up for a time. He's talking about the Jerusalem on the earth. And the people shall be chastened during a time, and the people shall be chastened during a time, and the world will not be given over to oblivion. Do you think that this is the city of which I said, on the palms of my hands have I engraven you, or I have graven you? This building now built in your midst is not that which is revealed with me. That which was prepared beforehand here from the time when I took counsel to make paradise and showed it to Adam before he sinned. So Adam saw the city too. Interesting. It never says he entered the city, but he was shown it. But when he transgressed the commandment, it was removed from him. So maybe he did go into the city. Now that I look at that a second time. As also paradise. So he was removed from the city of Enoch and the city and paradise. After these things, I showed it to my servant Abraham by night. There it is, among the portion of the victims. And again, also I showed it to Moshe on Mount Sinai when I showed it to him the likeness of tabernacle and all its versatiles. So even Moses sees this city, and he models the tabernacle after that. The point I want to make is that this city of Enoch was on the earth beforehand, and it was taken up too. So that's kind of crazy to think about. I think that's all I have on this chapter. There's a lot to be said on chapter 6. I'm going to hand it back to you, Michael.
All right, real quick, the chat was going asking a few questions, and I wanted you to talk about the verse in John where it says no one has ascended to heaven. I know you have a great response to that regarding Enoch. Can you say that before I continue?
Yahusha saying
Yeah.
that, okay. So I don't have that verse in front of me. Someone's going to tempt me and put that verse in front of me. But, but I do have an explanation for it, and I wasn't thinking about that at the moment, and I have it written out, and I'd love to quote from it. But let me see if I could
I just put it in
sum
the
this.
chat for you.
Let me see if I could sum this up really quickly. What he is saying there is that he's saying how he is going to resurrect from the dead, and he is going to ascend to the heavens, and that he is going to do it by his own power. And that nobody is able to do that. Nobody has ascended to heaven by his own power. Even when Enoch and Eliyahu ascended to heaven, they did not do it by their own power. Now, you can argue whether or not Enoch and Eliyahu uh, died at a later time, or if they haven't died yet, or if they did die before the Millennial Kingdom, or whatever. That's the whole thing up for debate. I actually, my point of view is that they did return to the earth. They gathered in Israel and with Yehuda, and they brought in the Millennial Kingdom, and they were killed at that time, and they are now permanently in immortal flesh, if we are indeed in the short season. I'm sorry for anyone who is joining this conversation online and listening to this and not having a clue what I'm talking about. But all that to say is, nobody was able to do it by their own power. All the people I mentioned, they were all taken up by Elohim, and anyone who was ever resurrected from the dead has not done it by their power. That's one of the things that makes him his Yahusha, our savior. It is by, of course, by the power of the Father, but that power was handed over to Yahusha to do those things. So that is my explanation on that.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'll finish this off in chapter 5. And you brought up a great point. I didn't even think about that. And you didn't want to read it. I posted in the chat, but I'm going to read 2 sentences. And that's Noah's birth in Enoch. So I guess I'll repost it for those who missed it. I'm just going to read the second and third. So, and his body was white as snow and red as the blooming of a rose. And the hair of his head and his long locks were white as wool. And his eyes were beautiful. And when he opened his eyes, he lighted up the whole house like the sun. And the whole house was very bright. That's amazing. So, just some additional context with Noah's birth, but that was great that Noah brought it up. But I totally forgot about that verse, but that's awesome. All right, so I'll finish this off. So I did 24. I'm going to do 27 and 29, and that should be it. So the KJV says, and all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. So Methuselah, the man with the longest lifespan, 969, yes, even greater than Adam, died just before the flood. So in primitive Hebrew, his name means, now this was crazy, when he is dead, it shall be sent. So basically, it's like a foreshadowing. He needed to die before the flood came. So when he's dead, it shall be sent. So some other, meanings of his name, possibilities. So man of the dart. Again, I have no idea what that means. Any thoughts on that? Man of the dart. And then his death shall bring judgment. So those are the 3 main definitions of Methuselah. But I thought when he is dead, it shall be sent was the best one because it fits perfectly in the narrative of the flood. So I'm going to read Jasher 5. Let's see. Do I want to read the whole thing? Okay, so I'll just start on 19. And Lamech, the father of Noah, died in those days. Yet verily he did not go with all his heart in the ways of his father. And he died in the 195th year of the life of Noah. And all the days of Lamech were 770 years, and he died. And all the sons of men who knew the Lord died in that year before the Lord brought evil upon them. For the Lord, or Yahuwah, willed them to die, so as to not behold the evil that Yah would bring upon their brothers and relatives, as he had so declared to do. So that's crazy. So it's almost like Methuselah is like a sign. Okay, he died. All right, time's coming. I got to get rid of all these other people that are righteous because of what I'm about to do. And it also says knew the Lord, right? It didn't say, it didn't say a certain bloodline or anything like that. It says those who knew him. How do you know him? Obey his commands. I just thought it was cool that Methuselah died. That's like boom. That's like an alarm. That would set. Be like, oh, okay, it's go time now. I wonder if that's gonna happen in the future. Or if it did happen, if we're post mill, if like in the days of Noah, right? If stuff like that happened. Okay, so that's what I got on 27, 29. And he called his name Noah, saying, "This shall comfort us concerning our work and our toil of our hands, because of the ground which Yahuwah had cursed." Palestinian. And be called his name Noah, consolation, saying, "This shall console us for our works that are not prosperous, and for the labor of our hands with the earth, which the Lord had cursed on the account of the guilt of the sons of men." So, in remembrance of Rob, I'm going to start putting some pictures here. A lot of you guys will know this, but I just wanted to, now that we're at the end of the Adamic genealogy, this is from Skiba and also Missler, but if you take the names of the meanings of these patriarchs, this is what it spells. So, Adam man, Seth appointed, Enosh mortal, Cain in sorrow, Mahalalel the blessed God, Jared shall come down, Enoch teaching, Methuselah his death shall bring, Lamech the despairing, and Noah comfort and rest. So man is appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring the despairing comfort rest. Amazing, praise Yah. And then another image. No colors on this one, or very little if there is. Check this out. Oh, very small. Sorry guys. So I'm going to blow this up and read it. So this is the following table lists all the ages of the patriarchs from Adam to Moses in the Masoretic, which adds up to 12,600. So if you can see, Adam 930, Seth 912, Enosh 905. I'm not going to read them all, but if you add up all the ages from Adam to Moses, you get 12,600. So again, more numbers. The value of 12,600 is a variant of the symbolic value of 1,260. Does that sound familiar? That's known in the book of Revelation, 1,260 days of tribulation. Although many derive from earlier traditions, another example of numeric schema of 12,600 can be found in the war scroll discovered at Qumran, where the sons of light shall fight against the sons of darkness in the final days for a period of 35 years. 35 years. I don't know. Employing the Jewish lunar solar calendar of the 360-day year, 35 equals 12,600. I don't know. I have no idea what to make of this. Maybe Noel can add more to that, but I just thought Adam to Moses, 1260, 1200, 600. Take off a zero. That's the same as the tribulation in the book of Revelation. Dead Sea Scrolls talks about the sons of light fighting with the sons of darkness for 35 years. What do you guys think about that? I thought that was really cool. Let's see. Some additional things to finish up this chapter. I only got 3 more things. Apocalypse of Moses recounts a legend of the lives of Adam and Eve from after their expulsion from the Garden of Eden to their death. It claims that Eve died 6 days after Adam, which would seem to make her also 930 years old. This is stuff me and Stephanie were talking about. There's not a lot of things written on Eve, except in the canon. So if this is true, Apocalypse of Moses at least shows that she died the same age as her rib, as Adam. So that'd be kind of cool. In the book of the generations, in the book of Jasher, it reads that after the death of Adam and Eve, the garments of Adam and we'll get to this. I know Noel will talk way more about this in the next 2 episodes, but I want to add some more to it. So the garments of Adam and Eve were given to Enoch, who passed them on to Methuselah, who gave the garments to Noah, who kept them in the ark. Ham stole the garments, kept them from his brothers. From there, they continued to pass through the generations. Again, eventually, I'm not going to spoil it, but some of you already know who ends up with it. But so I just wanted to point out. So it seems that both Adam and Eve had died during the time of Noah. So if Yeshua is the second or last Adam, it appears he also died in the days of Noah, during the days of Noah. I don't, if there's a parallel here, and I talked about it last week, the parallels between Adam and Yeshua. Adam died in the days of Noah. Yeshua died in the days of Noah. Not 2,000 years later. If we're looking at a future days of Noah, worldview, it had to have come way before that. That's when he died. If it's paralleled to Adam, What do you guys think about that? I thought that was a pretty cool connection. And finally, Joshua 5, starting in 12. And at this time, the sons of men sowed the ground, and a little food was produced. Yet the sons of men did not turn from their evil ways. And they trespassed and rebelled against Yah. And the wife of Lamech conceived and bare him a son at that time, at the revolution of the year. And Methuselah called his name Noah, saying the earth was in his days at rest and free from corruption. And Lamech, his father, called his name Menachem, saying, this one shall comfort us in our works and miserable toil in the earth, which Yah had cursed. And the child grew up and was weaned, and he went in the ways of his father Methuselah, perfect and upright with Yah. The part I want to point out is, well, first of all, his name means rest, right? I already talked about that. Noah comforted rest. It says, they called his name Noah. The earth was in his days at rest, free from corruption. I'm putting it out there. Was Noah born on a sabbatical year, Jubilee, or the seventh year when he let the land rest? That was an interesting connection. My wife and I were talking about that. Doesn't mean anything crazy, but it just, extra little bits and pieces and clues of when possibly Noah was born. Was it on a Jubilee year or sabbatical year? That's all I got for chapter 5. Anything else, Noel, or do you want to open it up?
Well, we're gonna still do chapter 6. Did you want to open it up on just 5 or just do the whole? I think we should do the whole thing.
Okay. Okay, that works. Perfect.
We are doing chapter 6 tonight, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So I just want to point out a couple of things you had mentioned, which were phenomenal. I am really glad you went over the names, the genealogy names, and it is interesting that Lamech means the despairing, and as you read in Jasher, I believe it's Jasher, and as I had commented earlier, that he seemed to not follow through with the ways of Yah, and so that's kind of interesting in his name. But okay, so covering the 12,600 years, that was really tripping me out. And I'm assuming you're getting, yeah, this is the Masoretic text. So this is not the LXX. And this is almost one of those things, guys, where I can't make sense of this because it literally is when you read the Masoretic and the LXX, as I pointed out earlier, there are books that line up with the Masoretic timeline, and there are books that line up with the LXX timeline, and clearly the Aramaic Targum lines up with the Masoretic, and the years are all different. But it's almost like looking at canonical books versus non-canonical, and how the Bible was put together in such a way that is almost divinely inspired, and people look at all the numbers and things in the 66 book canon. It's really phenomenal. Even though it's there's more books out there, it's not saying that there are other books that are not from Yah, but it's just the way things are set up. So this 12,600, as you point out, connects with numbers in Revelation. The War Scroll is a very interesting read. I read that earlier this year, and I was trying to make sense of when it might have happened, if it is legitimate. I'm not going to comment on that now, but what stuck out to me with the 12 is that in the Apocalypse of Abraham, and I went over this book with Zen Garcia. One of the things that stuck out to me is that it said that there are 12 hours. So you have with Enoch the 10 weeks, well, here you have the 12 hours. And it was abundantly clear to me, abundantly, that the last week would follow Messiah. I'm not the last week, the last hour, and that you can divide that by the way it was divided was by 500. So I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, so that was really good. Thank you for covering that. I'm going to go ahead and start reading Genesis 6, and then I'm going to hand it right back over to Michael to get the first commentary. So here we go. And it was when the sons of men began to multiply upon the face of the earth, and fair daughters were born to them. And the sons of the great saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and painted and curled, walking with a revelation of the flesh and with imaginations of wickedness, that they took them wives of all who pleased them. And Yahuwah said by his word, all the generations of the wicked which are to arise shall not be purged after the orders of the judgments of the generation of the deluge, which shall be destroyed and exterminated from the midst of the world. Have I not imparted my Ruach HaKodesh to them, or placed my Ruach HaKodesh in them, that they may work good works? And behold, their works are wicked. Behold, I will give them a prolongment of 120 years, that they may work repentance and not perish. There's another 12 right there. Uh, Sam Jazza and Uzziel, who fell from heaven, were on the earth in those days. And also after the sons of the great had done, and with the daughters of men, they bare to them. And these are they who are called men who are of the world, men of names, or as the Masoretic would say, men of renown. And Yahuwah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and all the imagery of the thought of his heart was only evil every day. And it repented Yahuwah in his word that he made man upon the earth, and he passed judgment upon them by his word. And Yahuwah said, I will abolish my word, or by my word. He will not abolish his word. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. I will abolish by my word man, whom I have created upon the face of the earth, from man to cattle, to the reptile, and to the fowl of the heavens, because I have repented in my word that I have made them. But Noah, who was righteous, found favor before Yahuwah. These are the genealogies of the race of Noah. Noah was a just man, complete in good works in his generation, and in the fear of Yahuwah walked Noah. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth was corrupted through the inhabitants thereof, who had declined from the ways of righteousness before Yahuwah, and the earth was filled with rapine. And Yahuwah beheld the earth, and lo, it was corrupt. For all flesh had every one corrupted his way upon the earth. And Yahuwah said to Noah, the end of all flesh cometh before me, because the earth is filled with rapine by their evil works. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of the wood of cedars. 150 sails shalt thou make to the ark in its left side, and 36 in its breadth, and 10 cabins in the midst, to lay up in them provisions, and 5 repositories on the right, and 5 on the left, and thou shalt protect it within and without a pitch. Go thou into Phizon, and take from thence a precious stone, and fix it in the ark to illuminate you. With the measure of a cubit or span shalt thou complete it above, and a door shalt thou set in the side of the ark, and with dwelling places inferior, second and third, shalt thou make it. And I, behold, I bring a flood of waters upon the earth to swallow up all flesh, with which hath in it the spirit of life from under the heavens. Whatever is upon the earth shall be swept away. But I will establish my covenant with thee, and thou shalt go into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife, and the wives of thy sons with thee. And of all that liveth of all flesh, 2 of every kind shall go into the ark, to be preserved alive with thee, male and female shall they be. Of the fowl after its kind, and of all cattle after its kind, and of every reptile of the earth after its kind, 2 of every sort shall enter to thee by the hand of the angel, who will take and cause them to enter to thee to be preserved. And thou take to thee of all food that is eaten, and let it be to thee and to them for food. And Noah did according to all that Yahuwah had instructed him. All right, handing it back to you, Michael, for the first commentary.
All right. Loaded chapter. It's going to take a while. Split it up. I'll start with 2 and 3, because 4 is my biggie. So, all right. So the KJV says that the sons of Yah saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Palestinian. And the sons of the great, didn't say God, saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and painted and curled, walking with revelation of the flesh and with imaginations of wickedness, that they took them wives of all who pleased them. Again, notice the sons of the great. Does the Targum not support the giant theory? Are they going with the sons of Seth? So historically, a lot of you guys know this, there's 3 prominent views on this. So first one, offspring of Seth. So the first references to the offsprings of Seth in these Genesis 6 chapter, the first references to the offspring of Seth rebelling from Yah, mingling with the daughters of Cain, are found in Christian and rabbinic literature from the 2nd century CE onwards. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Origen, letters attributed to Saint Clement, they all subscribe to that view. It is also the view expressed in modern canonical Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. Their defense would be, in Judaism, the sons of God usually refer to the righteous, the children of Seth. Other early Christians believed that the sons of God were the descendants of Seth. Augustine of Hippo subscribed to this view, based on Julius Africanus's book City of God, which refers to the sons of God as being the descendants of Seth or Sethites, the pure line of Adam. The daughters of men are viewed as descendants of Cain. Another view, which is what I take, are angels. All of the earliest sources interpret the sons of God as angels. From the 3rd century BC onward, references are found in Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls, Jubilees, Testament of Reuben, 2nd Baruch, Josephus, and the Book of Jude. So in the Septuagint, the interpretive reading angels is found also in the Codex Alexandrinus, which is one of the 4 main witnesses to the Greek text. Christian writers such as Martyr, Eusebius, Clement of Alexandria, Commodianus believed that the sons of God were fallen angels who engaged in an unnatural human union with human women, resulting in begetting the Nephilim. Finally, the third view, deified kings and tyrant judges. So there's also a large consensus within the scholarly community, seminary, that the sons of God were simply deified kings of the various Canaanite city-states. These would be the same Canaanite city-states that later Israelites would eventually flee and who would eventually resettle in the Judean highlands. What do you guys think? Remember, I said take notes, add to it, maybe speak up on this part. I know Noah will talk about definitely the first 2 options, and he makes great cases, no doubt about it. So, is this the only time these sons of Elohim occur in the Tanakh? Job 1, Job 2, Job 1:6, Bana ha Elohim. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan also came among them. Were those the sons of Seth? No, those are angels. Job 2:1, Bana ha Elohim. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan also came among them to present himself before the Lord. Again, those appear to be angels. Those aren't sons of Seth. Same word as Genesis 6. Job 38, a little bit different of a word. It takes away the ha, so it's Bana Elohim. This is Job 38, though. Who set its measurements, since you know? Or who stretched the measuring line over it? On what word's basis sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. This is creation. These aren't the sons of Seth at creation shouting for joy. These are angels. So, in my opinion, these weren't the sons of Seth. These are the exact same word as used right here. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about more the possibility of the sons of Seth that are close to these words. So, Bana Elim, Psalms 29:1. Bana, same word as the other ones, but Elim, E-L-I-M. So, Psalms 29:1, ascribe to the Lord, sons of the mighty. Ascribe to the Lord, glory and strength. Sons of the mighty. So I haven't read this in context. It very well could be talking about humans, and I think it is. Psalms 82:6, Benai Eloion, E-L-I-O-N. So Psalms 82:5, they do not know, nor do they understand. They walk around in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you are gods, and you are sons of the Most High. Again, that's people too, it appears to be. Again, showing the disparities between this and Genesis 6. Psalms 89:6, B'nai Elim, E-L-I-M. Psalms 89, for who is in the skies is comparable to the Lord? Who among the sons of the mighty is like the Lord? Again, most likely humans. And finally, a close related Aramaic expression occurs in Daniel 3:25. Bar Elahin, E-L-A-H-I-N. So Daniel says, he responded, look, I see 4 men untied and walking about in the middle of the fire, unharmed. And the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods, B'nai Elim. So again, it's similar, but not exactly. When you take the exact word, it's talking about angels. Okay, I'll do 3 real quick. I don't have much. I don't have enough to know. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man, for that he is also his flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years old. Palestinian, way different. And the Lord said by his word, all the generations of the wicked which are to arise shall not be purged, after the order of the judgments of the generation of the deluge, which shall be destroyed and exterminated from the midst of the world. Now, this is cool. Have I not imparted my Holy Spirit to them, or placed my Holy Spirit in them, that they may work good works? And behold, their works are wicked. Behold, I will give them a prolongment of 120 years, that they may work repentance and to not perish. All right. I remember, I remember Neroni talked about this even during our wisdom study, and part of the anti it being wisdom, they would say there's no Holy Spirit in the New Testament or in the Old Testament. Where is it? Where is this Holy Spirit? Even though wisdom describes it, it didn't say it. It was two separate words. I love how the Palestinian literally says, "My Holy Spirit." Okay, so considering this reference to the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, I want to reference Enoch 42. So just remember, the Lord said, "My spirit shall not always strive with men." Enoch 42. Wisdom found no place where she might dwell. Then a dwelling place was assigned her in the heavens. Wisdom went forth to make her dwelling among the children of men, and found no dwelling place. Wisdom returned to her place, and took her seat among the angels. And unrighteousness went forth from her chambers, whom she sought not she found, and dwelt with them, as rain in a desert and dew in a thirsty land. To me, that's a perfect parallel to that Genesis 6:3 passage. The Spirit was not always striving with men, and wisdom is being talked about that. I have a lot, but I will stop here on 3 and hand off to Noel.
So for those of you who have, and that was all great, Michael. Great job. And I do want to quickly apologize to everyone tonight that I feel very jumbled in my notes tonight. And usually I try to have a very tight script as I go down this. And I feel like I'm all over the place tonight. But that being said, in the past, if you guys have followed my work, at least over the last year and a half specifically, I have come to the conclusion that both theories are correct. Michael talked about 3 theories, but let's just talk about the Sethite theory versus the Watchers theory. I believe that they're both correct. I believe that they both took the daughters of men. Now, the wording here is very it's very interesting how they gave it in the Aramaic Targum, because and Michael asked at the beginning, are they taking the Sethite view? Now, he did a word study. The thing what I'm looking at here is the order of events. We see the sons of the great. Who are the sons of the great? Okay, that could be debated. Obviously, are those the sons of Seth or the angels? It says they saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and painted and curled, walking with revelations of flesh. Now, that's really important in understanding the wording of event there. And then it says that they went and took human wives who they desired. And then an interesting thing that happens. They say Samjaza and Uzziel, who fell from heaven, were on the earth in those days. Well, wait a second. I thought Samjaza and Uzziel were the 200. I thought they were one of the watchers. So why would it say that they were on the earth in those days when the sons of the great came down and took the wives? And why do well, I'll get to it, but according to Enoch's timeline, the women aren't given makeup and other things until after the watchers come down. So the order of events here seems a little confusing, but I actually think it brings a lot of clarity in my mind, and I'm going to present a case for that and why both things are happening. All right, so I don't know if I need to read this in Enoch. I think everyone here has. It would be repetitive. It comes from chapter 7. And it of Enoch, and it says, it happened after the sons of men had multiplied in those days that the daughters were born to them, elegant and beautiful. And when the watchers, the sons of heaven, behold them, they became enamored of them, say to each other, come, let us select for ourselves women, and so on and so forth. You guys know the story. All right. And skipping a few verses ahead, it says, then they took women, each choosing for himself, whom they began to approach. And the way it's the way it's positioned, the wording, it's almost like the husbands were probably, a lot of them were being murdered. They were being off. Like they saw a woman, they were basically treating themselves as kings over authority of the earth, and we're going to take who we want. And all right. I want you to pay attention that in this passage in Enoch 7, I don't think I read it, but you guys know it says that there were 200 angels. All right. Now, Jubilees unquestionably supports the Enochian angels theory. So it says in Jubilees chapter 5, and it came to pass when the children of men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that angels of Elohim, so there it specifically says angels, it doesn't say the sons of Elohim, saw them on a certain year of this Jubilee, that they were beautiful to look upon, and they took themselves women of all whom they chose, and they bore unto them the sons, and they were the Nephilim. Okay, so you guys know that story. And well, I'll go ahead and finish reading this because this will play into later tonight. And iniquity increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted its ways, alike men and cattle and beasts and birds and everything that walks on the earth. All of them corrupted their ways and their orders, and they began to devour each other. And iniquity increased on the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of men, of all men, was thus evil continually. And Elohim looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, and all flesh had corrupted its orders, and all that were upon the earth had wrought all manner of evil before their eyes. Okay. Now, seems to me like Jasher agrees with the sons of Seth theory. And again, that's okay. Like I've pointed out many times that if you have multiple biographers writing about the same event, they're going to have, you could say biases, but maybe just a point of view, interest, points they want to get across. And this is what you could be telling two events one event that sounds like two events, but it's really one event. So here we see in Jasher 4, and all the sons of men departed from the ways of Yahuwah in those days as they multiplied upon the face of the earth with sons and daughters, and they taught one another their evil practices, and they continued sinning against Yahuwah, and every man made unto himself an Elohim, and they robbed and plundered every man his neighbor as well as his relative, and they corrupted the earth, and the earth was filled with violence. And their judges and rulers went to the daughters of men and took their wives by force from their husbands. So judges and rulers. It says nothing here about angels. It doesn't even say the sons of Elohim. It just says the judges and rulers now. It doesn't even say the sons of Seth, by the way. Just I'm assuming actually now that I think about it, these judges and rulers are probably the sons of Cain. They took him by force, as I explained, from their husbands according to their choice. And the sons of men in those days took from the cattle of the earth, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other. Well, that's really fascinating, considering the fact that every other testament we can find says the angels were the one to teach them this. Yet it just says here that the men were mixing all manners of species one from another, genetic splicing, exactly what we're seeing in the world happening today. It's like the theme of the Jurassic World movies, if you guys watch those, in order therewith to provoke Yahuwah. And Elohim saw the whole earth, and it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways upon earth, all men and animals. So here we're seeing multiple things happening. They don't all seem to agree. All right. Let's see. Then we see, I'm going to skip some of these notes. I don't need to get into these. These will just confuse you of why I have these. Okay. Okay, so then let's jump into Adamic literature. And you get into Adamic literature like first and second Adam and Eve, it straight out says that the sons of Elohim are the sons of Seth. Here's what it says. After the death of Adam and of Eve, Seth severed his children and his children's children from Cain's children. So Seth is now, he's kind of like the high priest now, and he's saying we're not going to associate with them anymore, and which was a good so we see the severing here, and then the theme of second Adam and Eve is showing how even though Seth severed them and said they are an unholy people, they don't want to follow Yah's ways, we're not going to associate with them. Eventually the sons of Seth saw that they were attracted to what the sons of Cain were doing, and it's pretty haunting the way it describes it, how the sons of Seth were on this mountain of worship, and the sons of Cain would camp all around it. Like their lights would go up, and they would put carnivals and racetracks, and something like from Pinocchio, like Pleasure Island. And they would put whorehouses and all these things, all to entice them to come down and to corrupt them. Cain and his seed went down and dwelt westward, below the place where he had killed his brother Abel. But Seth and his children dwelt northwards upon the mountain of the cave of treasures, in order to be near to their father Adam. And as pointed out, the mountain is what I believe is Mount Zion. And Seth the elder, tall and good, with a fine soul and of a strong mind, stood at the head of his people and tended them in innocence, penitence, and meekness, and did not allow one of them to go down to Cain's children. But because of their own purity, they were named children of Elohim. So there it is. and they were with Elohim instead of the host of angels who fell. Hmm. So it's saying here that there were a host of angels who had fallen, who were with the sons of Cain. Take that into your consideration. For they continued in praises to Elohim and in singing psalms unto him in their cave, the cave of treasures. All right, let's keep reading a little bit further from Second Adam and Eve, chapter 11. Then Seth stood before the body of his father Adam and his mother Eve and prayed night and day and asked for mercy towards himself and his children, and that when he had some difficult dealing with a child, he would give him counsel. But Seth and his children did not like earthly work, but gave themselves to heavenly things, for they had no other thought than praises, doxologies, and psalms unto Elohim. Therefore did they at all times hear the voice of angels, praising and glorifying Elohim from within the garden, or when they were sent by Elohim on an errand, or when they were going up to heaven. For Seth and his children, by reason of their own purity, heard and saw those angels. Then again, the garden was not far above them, but only some 15 spiritual cubits. Now, one spiritual cubit answers to 3 cubits of man, altogether 45 cubits. I won't be going over all that. Seth and his children dwelt in the mountain below the garden. It's just saying that Mount Zion has like a portal, an entryway to heaven, and that they, obviously, when Adam was created on Mount Zion, or what we'd say Mount Moriah, and he returned there after being cast from paradise. It only makes sense that um, it's all there. They sowed not, neither did they reap. They wrought no food for the body, not even wheat, but only offerings. They ate of the fruit and of trees well flavored that grew on the mountains where they dwelt. Then Seth often fasted every 40 days, as did also his eldest children. For the family of Seth smelled the smell of the trees in the garden when the wind blew. They were happy, innocent, without sudden fear. There was no jealousy, no evil action, no hatred among them. There were no animal passions. From no mouth among them went forth either foul words or curses, neither evil counsel nor fraud. For the men of that time never swore, but under hard circumstances, when men must swear, they swore by the blood of Abel the just. But they constrained their children and their women every day in the cave to fast and pray and to worship the Most High Elohim. They blessed themselves on the body of their father Adam and anointed themselves with it, and they did so until the end of Seth drew near. The whole reason I read that was to show that there was a complete separation, the sons of Elohim from the sons of Cain, and then we're going to get to the point where the angels show up. Now, after this, 100 men of the children of Seth gathered together and said among themselves, "Come, let us go down to the children of Cain and see what they do and enjoy ourselves with them." So, right here, we see the sons of Elohim going down to the daughters of men because they saw them fair. All right. Now, keep in mind, this is 100, not 200 watchers, just 100, different number. And here it gets even more interesting. Satan then appeared to him. Let's see. Who is this that him? Maybe it's Seth. I'm not sure. No, it's Jared. This is Jared. Satan then appeared to him, Jared, with 30 men of his host. The 30 men of his host, I believe, are 30 of the 200 watchers. In the form of handsome men, Satan himself being the elder and tallest among them, with a fine beard. They stood at the mouth of the cave and called out Jared from within it. All right. So we see here he's got 30 men. Okay, I'm going to skip to a few verses ahead, chapter 17. But when the sons of Cain saw them, so what happens is that they actually entice. I'm a little rusty on this. They entice Jared and some of his men to go down and see the sons of Cain. So Jared goes down, and when the sons of Cain saw them, they wondered at them and thought, "These are beautiful to look at, and such as we never saw before." So they rose and came with them to the fountain of water to see their companions. They found them so very handsome that they cried, okay, man, I'm a little jumbled, guys. I guess these are the angels. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you. They found them so very handsome that they cried aloud about their places for others to gather together and come and look at these beautiful beings. Then they gathered around them, both men and women. Then the elders said to them, "We are strangers in your land. Bring us some good food and drink, and your women," okay, and your women to refresh ourselves with. So Satan and his angels are going with Jared down to the sons of Cain, and the people are really attracted to these angels. And they're asking for their women. They bring them their women. When those men heard these words of the elder, every one of Cain's sons brought his wife, and another brought his daughter. And so many women came to them, everyone addressing Jared either for himself or for his wife, all alike. But when Jared saw what they did, his very soul wrenched itself from them. Neither would he taste of their food or of their drink. The elder saw him as he wrenched himself from them and said to him, "Be not sad. I am the great elder. As thou shalt see me do, do thyself in like manner." They're trying to get Jared to sin. Then he spread his hands and took one of the women, the elder angel, and 5 of his companions did the same before Jared, that he should do as they did. But when Jared saw them working in infamy, he wept and said in his mind, "My father never did the like." He then spread his hands and prayed with a fervent heart and with much weeping, and entreated Elohim to deliver him from their hands. No sooner did Jared begin to pray than the elder fled with his companions. I love that. For they could not abide in a place of prayer. Then Jared turned around but could not see them, but found himself standing in the midst of the children of Cain. All right. So what we're seeing there is Satan's confederacy of fallen angels are selecting human women for wives and then asking Jared to do the same. We're seeing both scenarios play out, sons of Seth and the Watchers. When people tell you that second Adam and Eve does not agree with the Watchers theory, that's actually, in my opinion, inaccurate. In other words, ancient Adamic literature wasn't saying that the Watchers never took human wives. Rather, it simply wasn't interested in that fact. It wanted to focus on the sons of Seth. The only story which the Sethites were concerned with was their own. Soon after Jared's return to the mountain, it is safe to assume the Watchers have been busy procreating. That's my problem. Well, you tell me, I assume too much. Well, let's keep reading then. Let's see what the narrative has to say. In chapter 20, and the sons of Cain who wrought all this and shone in beauty and gorgeous apparel gathered together at the foot of the mountain in splendor with horns and gorgeous dresses. This is the part I told you that really haunted me. The sons of Cain are trying to entice the rest of the sons of Seth to come down. So they gather at the foot of the mountain with horns and gorgeous dresses, the women, and horse races, committing all manner of abominations. Meanwhile, the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, prayed and praised Elohim in the place of the hosts of angels who had fallen. So again, the watchers have already fallen. They're praying on their behalf. Wherefore Elohim had called them angels because he rejoiced over them greatly. Okay, so, all right. But after this, they no longer kept his commandment, nor held by the promise he had made to their fathers, but they relaxed from their fasting and praying and from the counsel of Jared their father, and they kept on gathering together on top of the mountain to look upon the children of Cain from morning unto evening, and upon what they did, upon their beautiful dresses and ornaments. And they're basically praying for those who have fallen. Uh, all right. So it says right there that the women seduce the sons of Seth. Now, I want to take you back to Enoch. Hopefully, you're not confused now at what I'm doing. I'm laying a case. And we find that Azazel teaches the women the use of paints and beautifying the eyebrows, but it only happens after the watchers come down. Moreover, Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, the fabrication of mirrors, and the workmanship of bracelets and ornaments, the use of paint, the beautifying of the eyebrows, stones of every valuable and select kind, and all sorts of dyes, so that the world became altered. Impiety increased, fornication multiplies, and they transgress and corrupted all their ways. So when you get back to Genesis 6 here, what I think they're saying the order is that they're addressing the watchers come down first. But Moses, in my opinion, I could be wrong, was not interested in talking about that. He was interested in the lineage of the sons of Seth versus the lineage of Cain. He was saying that the sons of Seth saw that the women were beautiful, they came down. And so when you see the order here, it says that the writer of the Targum is almost correcting this in a way, because he's saying that the women were already given the makeup and all the beautifying, which happened only after the watchers came down, which is why afterwards he makes a case to say they're clarifying, look, the sons of Seth came down, took on the daughters of Cain, but Samjaz and Uzziah were in the earth in those days. Okay, hopefully everyone followed that. That took forever to get through that, but I felt like that needed to be made. I rest my case. You guys are free to disagree. I'm going to hand it back to Michael, and then I have more commentary afterwards.
All right, I probably spoke too soon because I knew you were going to lay a great case. Hopefully, people were following. I've been struggling too, so I've been bumbling my words and kind of lost in my notes as well. So hopefully you guys are kind of following us. So I'm going to do 4 and 5. So I have, like I said, a lot on Genesis 6. Number 4 is a lot. So there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So a few word studies here. That word bear, so they bear children to them. The first one I want to talk about is Genesis 31, and just to summarize that chapter, because without it, it's going to kind of seem a little weird. It's basically Jacob separating from Laban. So he's been working for Laban to try to gain the two wives, Rachel and Leah. So right before this passage that I'm about to read, Laban's sons are angry with Jacob for taking a large portion of their inheritance. He also finds out that Laban has lost favor with Jacob. Jacob knows he must leave, but he's afraid that if his wives don't want to go, because that's their father. Rachel and Leah end up agreeing. Even they have that rivalry because they realize that they're not going to get inheritance from Laban anyway, so they'll go with Jacob. So this next verse is saying Genesis 31:8. If he said this, the speckled shall be your wages, Laban, then all the flock delivered speckled, and that word delivered is bear. And if he said to this, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock delivered striped. So sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The flocks delivered speckled, the flock delivered stripe. I'm wondering, I don't know if this is some way saying kind of a two seed line thing, speckled or striped, based on that same word for bear. What do you guys think about it? Also, which I thought was really unique too, that the same word for renown. So I've heard that a lot. Men of renown, men of renown. I've never really looked into what the word means. I always thought it meant like men of, people that have been around for a while or something like that, of great stature that have been around for a while. But at least in this verse, it's not that. So, oh, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. So another, forget that. We'll get to that in a second. Another cross reference on bear. So I just said the Laban story was delivered speckled and striped. Could that be two seed lines? A bear as well. In Deuteronomy 21, if a man has two wives, Jacob has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved bear him sons. Okay, so that word bear is the same as bear children, and delivered, striped, or speckled. If the unloved wife has the firstborn son, basically it's talking about he has to give the inheritance to the firstborn to not show favoritism to the one he loved. So initially I'm just looking at the actual word bear and kind of linking it to see how it relates to these Genesis 6:4. But then it starts to get even deeper. So, the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, bare children to them. Genesis 31:8 talks about speckled and striped. Delivered is their two seed line thing. And then also Deuteronomy talks about a man has two wives and he bare him sons and should not favor, and this goes back to Cain and Abel too, should not favor, one son over the other. Okay, so the second word study is renown. So like I was saying about the renown, I had no idea what it is. I heard about it. I never looked into it. Especially listening to Skiba and all that. But Leviticus 24:10. So now the son of an Israelite woman, his father was an Egyptian, went out among the sons of Israel. And the Israelite woman's son and an Israelite man had a fight in the camp, and the son of the Israelite one blasphemed the name and cursed. So they brought him to Moses. The name is renown, and it's capitalized, the name, in Leviticus 24. The blaspheme, the name is capitalized. So renown is the same word as the name. That's interesting. The second part also is named, Deuteronomy 28:58. If you are not careful to follow all the words of this law that are written in this book, we know this passage well, to fear this honored and awesome name. So that's the same word as the renowned name. The Lord your God, then the Lord will bring extraordinary plagues on you, to your descendants, severe and lasting plagues. So again, the cross-reference of the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Blaspheme the name in Leviticus, and an awesome name, the Lord your God, the Most High Yahuwah, in Deuteronomy. But then it also says if they do that, if they don't fear the Lord, he'll bring plagues, which is kind of similar to the flood that's coming that we'll get to. Okay, enough of the word study there. So back to the giants. So according to the book of Numbers in 1333, interesting number, they later inhabited Canaan at the time of the Israelite conquest of Canaan. And it basically says, and there we saw Nephilim, the sons of Anak. Do you remember in our Hebrew John study, they actually put the sons of Anak in the Hebrew John study. So were these giants there at the time of Yeshua walking the earth? And again, that would go within the study of Yeshua dying within the days of Noah. That's pretty cool if that's true. So continuing in Numbers, who come of the Nephilim and were in our own sight as grasshoppers. And so we were in their sight. So they were huge. So, okay, some other names I've found throughout all these books that I've researched, besides giants, they're also translated as Nephilim, fallen warriors, gigantes, fallen Gibberim, Nephilim warriors, the violent ones, the fallen ones, and the ones falling. So just to give you some added context. So in First Enoch, they were great giants whose height was 300 cubits. This would make them 450 feet tall. Think about that. 450 feet tall. That's 4.5 football fields tall. 130 for the Europeans, 137 meters. That's how tall these were in Enoch, these giants. Also in the book of Enoch and Jubilees, the children of Nephilim, focus on the children, are called, I'm butchering this, Eliod, Eli, O-U-D, who are considered a separate race from the Nephilim, but they share the fate of the Nephilim. Also, while researching, I think Noel talked about this, but I forgot where I found this, and this could be just fable. Yah granted 10% of the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim to remain after the flood as demons to try to lead the human race astray until the final judgment. 10%. And I never quote from this, but according to Islamic legend, the giants were not wiped out by the flood, since some of them had been too tall to be drowned. Instead, Yah destroyed them after they rejected further warnings. After death, they were banished into the lower layers of hell. And I mentioned just during our Jude study. So Jude 6 talks about the Nephilim. This is Genesis 6:6. Genesis 6 talks about the Nephilim, not 6:6. Genesis 6 talks about the Nephilim. Enoch 6 talks about the Nephilim. There's your 666. So is the 666 related to these fallen angels? And that's why it's the number of the beast. I don't know. Genesis 6, Jude 6, Enoch 6. I'll talk about the giants. Okay, so extra canonical books that talk about giants. Judith. Not by use was their champion struck down, nor did Titans bring him low, nor did tall giants attack him. But Judith, the daughter of Merari, by the beauty of her face, brought him down. I forgot who they're talking about here, but all these giants could not contain him, but Judith did. Brought him down. Kind of like the Samson, the woman brought him down. So Sirach talks about the giants. Things many times, and I've heard of even more striking examples. The Lord's flaming anger will break out against a small gathering of sinners or a disobedient nation. He did not forgive those ancient giants who rebelled against him, confident of their own strength. Okay, Baruch talks about the giants. In it were born the giants, renowned at the first. There it is, that word again. Huge in stature, skilled in war. These God did not choose, nor did he give them the way of understanding. They perished for lack of prudence, perished through their own folly. Wisdom of Solomon talks about the giants. For in the old time also, when the proud giants perished, the hope of the world governed by the hand escaped in a weak vessel, and left to all ages a seed of generation. And finally, Third Maccabees talks about the giants. You destroyed those who in the past committed injustice, among whom were even giants who trusted in their strength and boldness, whom you destroyed from bringing on them a boundless flood. So I thought that was cool. That was a good way to end it. Okay, so more on the sons of Seth theory. So holders of this view have looked for support in Yeshua's statement where he says, in the days before the flood, there were humans marrying and giving in marriage. They're talking about humans. So that's how they're equating that part. Matthew 24:38. Like I said earlier, Orthodox Judaism has taken a stance against this idea. Shimon Bar Yochai pronounced a curse on anyone teaching this idea. Rashi, the famous rabbi Nachmanides, followed this. Most Jewish commentaries and translations describe the Nephilim as being the offspring of sons of nobles rather than the sons of God or sons of angels, or sons of the great, possibly. So the sons of Seth view is also a view presented in a few extra biblical books, and no mention these, but I just want to, keep you guys, updated on this. Yet ancient works, including Clementine literature, the 3rd century Cave of Treasures, the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan. In these sources, these offspring of Seth were said to have disobeyed God by breeding with Canaanites, producing wicked children, thus angering God into bringing about the deluge. So, again, this is just another view that these books talk about the sons of Seth, and Noel did a great job explaining it. Finally, in Aramaic culture, this really isn't sons of Seth, but the term Nephilah refers to the constellation of Orion. And I know some people have linked Orion with Nimrod, and Nephilim to the offspring of Orion in mythology. What do you guys think about that? I thought that was interesting. Nimrod, Orion, constellation, Nephilah refers to that. Okay, Palestinian. This was all based on the KJV. Palestinian, like Noel said, Shemyaza and Uziel. And this is where he kind of won me there, because he made a good point here. Who fell from heaven were on the earth in those days. And also after the sons of the great had gone in with the daughters of men. They bear with them, and these are also the men who are of the world, men of names. Men of renown, men of names, the name. Okay, so a few things on Semyaza. I couldn't find more on this, but this just totally blew me away if this is true. In colloquial, and I don't even know what this is, in colloquial Aramaic of the Christians of the Middle East, it has become common, Shemyaza. They say that name, that's their name, television, hear and see. So Semyaza equals the TV. I thought that was pretty interesting. In the book of Enoch, Semyaza is portrayed as the leader of a band of angels. We know that, the Watchers, sons of God. These Watchers become consumed with the lust for mortal women and enter into machinations against heaven in order to consummate their desires. The Watchers shared humankind various forbidden arts, sciences, celestial secrets, or mysteries of the knowledge. They taught us the secrets of magic, of war, seductive ornamentation, including jewelry and cosmetics, all of which ultimately brought down the wrath of heaven upon their angels and their spawn. Okay, so I am not going to read that, but I'm going to post that. Enoch talks about that. Basically, about that. Let's see. Do I want to read any of this? No, I don't, but I bet it. Okay, so Uziel, that was the other angel mentioned in the Targum. So there wasn't much on him, and there was also some conflicting things. So I found good things about him and bad things about him. So if it's the same angel, two angels, I don't know. So according to the Torah, Uziel means El is my strength, or God is my strength. Some traditions say Uziel was the angel who fought and wrestled with Jacob. Thought that was cool. Now, in rabbinic literature, Uziel is one of the cherubim. He is also the chief choir of the angels called the Malachim. He is also known the angel of mercy. He was one of the angels who stand before the throne of God, one of the 9 angels who rule over the 4 winds, and he was one of the fallen angels or the watchers. So again, research I did on Uziel, there were good and bad things about him. So I thought it was interesting that Palestinian mentioned him there. And I'm going to just do 5 and then hand off to Noel. It's not as long. So, in KJV, and God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. I want to focus on that word imagination. So, Genesis 8, we'll get to it in a few chapters. Noah built and this is after the flood, Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal, some of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. The Lord smelled the soothing aroma, and the Lord said to himself, I will never again curse the ground on account of men, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth, and I will never again destroy every living thing. So that word intent is the same word as the imagination. So that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart is the same as for the intent of the man's heart. Did you catch that? Did you notice that also? It's now saying he's not cursing the ground anymore. What do you guys think about that? Stephanie pointed that out. It's saying he's not cursing it post-flood. We've done these deep studies up until this point, and we were all about how the ground's cursed. But here it's saying, I will never again curse the ground on the account of men. Because he's like, the hearts are always evil. I'm not going to punish them again right now, right? That's pretty cool. He's not cursing the ground anymore? I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Take notes, like we were saying. Speak up later. 1 Corinthians 28:9. As for you, my son Solomon, know the God of your father and serve him wholeheartedly and with a willing mind, for the Lord searches all hearts and understands every intent of the thoughts. If you seek him, he will let you find him. But if you forsake him, he will reject you forever. Consider now, for the Lord has chosen you to build a house for the sanctuary. Be courageous and act. So a few things here. So the word intent, same word as imagination. And he understands every intent of the thoughts. So not only the heart, but the thoughts. So it says the Lord searches all your hearts, understands every intent of the thoughts. Same word as imagination and intent of the heart. Also, verse, it's talking about building a house for the sanctuary. So again, these word studies, to me, maybe I'm just alone in this, but they tie so many things together. There's parallel here between Solomon's temple, which I will talk a lot more later, and Noah's Ark. So it's saying, he's understanding all the thoughts of men. He's chosen you to build a house for the sanctuary. Same with Noah. He knows the thoughts of the men. He's building an ark. Finally, okay, so Isaiah 26:2. Open the gates so a righteous nation can come in. One that remains faithful. You will keep the mind that is dependent on you in perfect peace, for it is trusting in you. You will keep the mind. So that word, the mind, same word as intent and imagination. So in summary, keep your imagination, keep your intent, and keep your mind on the Most High. Praise Yah. Amen. That's only 5 for me, but I've done a lot. I'll hand off to Noel and get some water.
Michael, I was going to ask because we're looking at the time and we've been at this for a couple hours now, and I have a lot more notes, but that could take us a whole nother hour. I'm curious if you want to maybe call it here and then pick up next time.
Works for me. Yeah, if you just want to open it up. Yep.
Yeah, we've been at this couple hours. You guys have all been patient, and I see some people having to go night. And one of the reasons, we started this an hour early, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Now we bumped it up an hour just so that we're not going late into the night for everybody, because people do have commitments the next day sometimes. So with that, Michael, was there anything that you wanted to sum up on? I think we got through Genesis like 6:5 or 6:6 right in there. So is there anything you wanted to sum up from all that?
No, I'm good. I thought it was great, and all that just for five sentences and 6. So.
You're right, Rebecca. It has been 3 hours. I was counting it was like an hour and 20 for the first segment, and then a little probably hour 40 or so for the second segment. So, okay,
We went a
with
lot
that,
longer on 5. We went a lot longer on 5 than I thought we were.
yeah, I agree. I thought we would knock it out really quickly, and yeah, we did. So, with that, I actually really like that Michael and I are taking our time going through this. I mean, I feel like there is so much we are just skimming over, and yet it's still taking so much time to cover all this. Because I'm looking at my notes, I'm going, oh man, like we'll be here another couple hours just to get through all this in chapter 6. So with that, I'm going to uh, close our end, Michael and my talking about this, and open it for you guys. And I think Michael said it several times. I said it at least once. Hopefully you guys are taking notes or something like that. If you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, disagreements, anything we missed, this is a good time to bring it up.
Hey, I had a thought as you were talking about the name Uziel and Samyaza in the Targum. I wanted to look up the etymology of the word Uziel, and I stumbled upon this I don't know Hebrew meanings website, and um, as you were saying, the word itself is from the verb azaz and the word el, so meaning to be strong in Elohim or in God or whatever. But if you look at the etymology of the word azazel, it's the same So you have the verb azaz and el, um, with a couple differentiations. It's also related to Uzziah, Ezra, Gaza, a bunch of other names. But I just found it interesting that Azazel and Uzziel are related in etymology, because we see Azazel as a compatriot of Semyaza in the Book of Enoch.
That makes sense to me. That it was as a
I just wanted to say I'm glad we're not rushing through this because I do have a lot. I hope that Michael covers more about the ground being cursed or not cursed. And I've got a whole bunch of questions about how Og possibly survived, and I hope you guys cover that next time, maybe.
Well, I'm trying to think what chapter.
Noah. So is it the days leading up to the flood, or is it just all the days of Noah, like either to the end of his death or maybe even his sons?
Yeah, I saw you make that comment in there. Was it so? What he's saying is that when we think of traditionally the days of Noah, we think about the days leading up to the flood, and then after the flood, it was no longer the days of Noah, even though Noah lived longer after the flood, as well as his son Seth. And so he's asking the question that did the days of Noah continue with Seth, which is interesting because that de- takes us up to Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. So is that included in the days of Noah as well?
Yeah, Seth would have died 500 years after the flood, which kind of matches that 536 worst year ever.
That's the first that question has ever been proposed to me. It's a great question. I don't know. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I think it fits with your timeline because not so much Seth. I haven't studied that part, but the Adam part. If Adam died in the days of Noah, right before the flood, Yeshua is the second Adam. He died before the days of Noah, and then, as Desmond pointed out, there was 350 years post the days of Noah, post flood. That would kind of fit with your timeline of the millennial reign not starting right at 70 AD, but a few hundred years later. To me, that fits perfectly, and it kind of blew me away. What do you guys think about that?
Well, the reference
Oh,
of the days of Noah comes from Luke 17, right?
Matthew as well, I believe. I think all the Gospels.
so for clarification, Seth, you're saying lived. I don't have the timeline in front of me, but you're saying Seth lived 500 years after the flood. Is that correct?
My bad, I misspoke. It's Shem.
Wait, who did I say? Oh, well, Shem. Okay, Shem lived 500 years after the. Yeah, we said Seth. Yeah, we know what we meant. Shem. Shem lived 500 years, correct?
Shem lived 600 years, but he was born in the 500 year of Noah, and then the flood came in the 600 year of Noah. So Shem was 100 years old when it happened, and then he lived 600. So he lived 500 years after the flood.
Right. Okay. Right. He lived 500 years. That's really interesting. That is a phenomenal connection, which I'm going to be looking more at. I'd never thought about that before. That's good. And see,
So
this is why we have you. This is why we have you guys take notes. This is awesome.
I did have a thought to that, and it's when you're reading both in Matthew and in Luke, it says of that day in reference to like the second coming, or you know, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like in the days of Noah. For, as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until that day Noah entered the ark, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Two in the field, one will be taken, one will be left. Two will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, one will be left. Therefore, be alert. So to me, that it really does look like a precursor thing, because he doesn't say. And then after that, that's just the way I read it.
That's good. Anybody else?
I also had a comment about the sons of God, um, and I might be totally wrong in this. It just popped in my head, kind of, but that if the sons of God were men, how could they be considered sons of God if they're willing to rape and commit adultery? You know, just taking any woman they wanted. Um, Whereas the angels would have been the sons of God just because they were actual creations of God, like Adam. Or I'm guessing the same criteria would be for them; they would have to follow the commandments. But I didn't know if there was any differentiation there.
I mean, that's a good question, and I guess that would be a good study to seek out. Can a fallen angel be referred to as a son of Elohim? You know, would Satan be a son of Elohim? And obviously, I can't answer that because I haven't looked at it from that angle. But that's really good. I mean, I think of the words of Yahusha that when we talk about serpent seed, and I need to always clarify this, that there's this the idea that Cain is the literal son of Satan and that he had a lineage that was always trying to get in the way of the messianic lineage, always at war with the messianic lineage, and in the end, the messianic lineage won out. But Yahusha said that he also clarified a different type of serpent seed, and he said that in the Gospel of John, and saying things like this will get you killed. I mean, obviously, I mean, he was like straight out speaking things that no wonder he was murdered. He looked to the temple controllers and said, "You're the sons of Satan." And but he clarified it. There, people will take that passage and say, "See, those were the sons of the Cain, Satan." But maybe they were, but contextually, he explains that there are the sons of eight, uh, the sons of Yah and the sons of Satan. You could be one or the other. That and it all comes to obeying his commands. And so, if you are against his commands and against the Torah and against the Father, then you are clearly a son of Satan. So I guess that begs the question: would they be considered the sons of El? One way you could look at this is that let's just go with the Sethite theory. All right, if the sons of if they are the sons of Elohim, I guess you're asking the question: would they still be the sons of Elohim afterwards? I'd say no, but it seems to be saying that it was the fall of the sons of Elohim that they no longer desire to be the sons of Elohim. They desire to be in the image of the sons of Cain. That's how I take it. Again, I could be wrong, and I just want to clarify to everyone that I believe both theories are correct. You see clearly that the sons of Seth gave up the mountain of worship. They went down, and one of the passages I didn't read is that once they go down there. Now you saw Jared; he was tempted and he prayed and he went back. But once you went down there and you sinned, you were never allowed to go back. It's very, very haunting. They would see what they had done, and it was too late. And so I don't know. I had a point to that, but you see it in the Genesis Targum that it seems like there was probably debate in that time as to this, and the translator in the Aramaic is clarifying, in my opinion, that he's saying, look, fine, okay, these guys we'll call them the sons of the great. They were the sons of Seth, like so many are claiming, but the incursion did happen, and here are these angels. They were here on the earth in these days, and I showed you the order of events as well. That according to Enoch, the beautifying of the women didn't come until after the initial watchers came down, the initial incursion, in which case then the sons of the great were then seduced, tempted by them. Again, that's just my conclusion, that we're seeing both happening there. So it's not disqualifying one or the other. It's saying they both fell. The angels fell and the sons of Seth, they all fell around this time. It was a horrid time, and very few were left on the earth. And by the end of it, it's literally if you see if you guys ever see the movie Noah, it treated Noah was played by Russell Crowe, and I assume that Russell Crowe was basically just playing himself because he was not a likable person. It treated like Noah like he was a total jerk. All right, but what was interesting about that movie was that it was basically just Noah and Methuselah on the mountain, and that's all that was left. And that's literally how it ends. That there were we see that there were some of the righteous taken up to heaven, so they skipped that part, but it was very few left leading up to the flood, and it was pretty abysmal. They had all wandered off and become the sons of Cain at that point. That seems pretty apparent in my mind.
Okay, you guys presented several of the mainstream views about the Genesis sons of God. There is an alternative view by a guy named Paul Sandu that has a lot of merit and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it goes beyond the boundaries of everything I've ever studied before. But if we think that Genesis, the beginning of Genesis, in the beginning, Yahuwah, or actually it's Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. Now, at what point was that? Is there a gap between that point and the second verse where it says, and the earth became void and without form? Possible that there were millions, if not billions of years of time between those two events, the gap theory, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. Now, when we look at the book of Job, when God is actually being sarcastic and he's asking Job, were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth and blah, blah, blah. And he says, and the angels sang, comma, and the sons of God shouted for joy. Now, there's two different beings here. You've got angels that are singing, and then you have sons of God that are shouting for joy. What if those sons of God were a special type of man that was created back during that ancient pre-Genesis time period that lived on this earth for the millions, if not billions of years, and there was a war between the angels and the sons of God, this type of man, a special type of man. But anyhow, I could go on, but if you want to do a study on this, he presents a lot of facts and a lot of scripture to back this up, and it makes a lot of sense and answers a lot of questions that most people just never even think of.
That was interesting. I'd never heard that presented before, that the sons of Elohim are a special class of people who are, I guess, capable of warring with angels. So that's interesting. Maybe you could drop a link for his book or his work in here just for reference, so anyone can look it up.
Yeah, it's Paul Sandu, Sandhu, and I mean, it's fascinating because really you have to realize now these sons of God, if they were men, they were in the heavens and watching the Father create the heavens and the earth. So it just gives a whole different perspective. And the one more thing is he differentiates between the anointed cherub that covereth in Ezekiel versus this the one in Isaiah, the word that shouldn't even be in the Bible, that's a Latin word, what do they call Lucifer, and then Satan. And he shows where all three of these, and of course most Christians put all three of those together and say they're all one and the same, that it's all Satan. Well, if you read scripture, it describes all three of those as different, I mean, totally different individuals. Nowhere in the Bible will you ever see Satan with any other description other than a snake, a serpent, a demon, a dragon, and a beast. He's never ever called an angel, and he's never ever called a man. And according to Sandu, he's a created being by these angels and these sons of God, that when they were doing genetic manipulation and all this, he's one of the created beings that just became extremely powerful. I'm not saying I agree with all that, but it is a fascinating study.
I'm curious, does he get into, if he's saying that the sons of Elohim are a special creation apart from, your typical man, and they were pre-existent before the creation story, does he get into Atlantean stuff? Does he, like, Atlantis was before the during the gap theory or anything like that?
Yeah, he does actually, and he has 4 different ages The golden age, back when this anointed cherub that covereth in Ezekiel, that he was the angel that was over the entire earth, and that he was the one that actually was the first originator of sin, and his sin was commerce. That he began to buy and sell the things that God had given freely to the entire world. And that was actually the first sin that was ever happened on the planet. And this war that they had, you have to realize these beings are way beyond us. We think atomic bombs are bad. Can you imagine the type of warfare that they would have had? And they destroyed the entire earth, and that's why in Genesis the earth was covered with water, is because the Father put the fires out with water and then had to recreate the earth and redo everything at that point. Like I said, it's fascinating, and he uses a lot of scripture, like in Jeremiah, where it talks about the ancients of old, and I mean, Jeremiah is an ancient of old as far as we're concerned. So what would have been ancients of old to him? And he's saying that he was talking about this previous world before our present world was created.
Fascinating.
We got two more questions. One would be, would Adam, because he was called a son of God, would he still be a son of God even after he sinned? Let's say he repented or whatnot, but is there any way he could still be a son of God after he sinned? And then also about the last verse, and that we read from the Palestinian, 5:32. Chapter 5, verse 32. It says, "And Noah was the son of 500 years." Why is that word son thrown in there? Because it's not in any other translations that I see. I mean, it's in the Oneklos and the Palestinian here, but I haven't seen that before where it says he was the son of 500 years or a son of 500 years. Son of what? What is it referring to? Is that referring to like son of God type deal, being Noah?
In the Bible, okay, and I'm not talking about extra biblical books, but in the Bible, if you do a search using a Bible study like Bible Hub or any other Bible, if you actually do a search for sons of God, it's only going to come up three times. Number one, Adam was a son of God, and Yeshua the Messiah was a son of God, and then that verse in Genesis. That's the only times you will ever see son of God. The word son of God is never ever actually tied to an angel in the Bible.
Right, I get that. My question ain't about, it's not really about that. It's about the insertion of that word in verse 5:32, where it said, "And Noah was the son of 500 years." When it says son, what is it referring to as in father? Because it doesn't say that for any of the other ones. Like you look up at Lamech, you look up at all the other ones, they don't say it like that. So what is the purpose of that extra word being added in there in both the Oneklos and the Palestinian? It seems like it's referring to, it only says the son or a son because it's in reference to his father. But why doesn't it put that same verbiage or that same, son for any of the other guys that just mentioned in the genealogy? Because they all had fathers too, unless this would be called out as having, a special father or something.
Right. So I'm trying to understand where Desmond, where you're coming from. I think I know where you're coming from. I'm not sure. Are you insinuating anything to do with the special birth of Noah?
I wasn't until you just said that. Now I'm remembering what Enoch said about, the shining eyes, and it reminds me of like Moses' face shining and stuff like that. So, I mean,
Well,
it seems
right, and so here's something I chose not to do tonight because I was trying to look at all my, different notes I had and what do I want to talk about, and one of them, which could have been a whole rabbit trail, is comparing the tales of the prophets from the Dead Sea Scrolls with the writings of Abraham and with Enoch, and they all three agree from completely different sources, especially the writings of Abraham, that there was something very special about Noah. And in fact, when Lamech sees Noah born, he then accuses his wife in Tales of the Patriarchs. he accuses his wife of having an affair with the angels, and she then returns fire and right after giving birth and being like, no, you were there for it. And she actually uses very provocative language. She said, "You heard my moans of pleasure." And so the idea with Noah when he was born is that it's almost like the writers didn't even want to say it, or they couldn't say it, but of these three texts, they're saying that there was something very special about him and where he came from. So that is interesting. That was alerting me because I didn't pick up on that, and I'm curious if there is a connection between the son of versus the sons of Elohim. So that is a very interesting. Um, and then the other one you had said about Adam, I think you had asked the question: would he still be a son of Elohim after he fell? And that's actually a fascinating question, and I'm not sure where you're all going with that. However, I would have to look up scriptural passages where it says that, we too can be sons of Elohim, of El, and that's, one of our goals in the resurrection. And so I don't know if he would have been after he sinned or not. I mean, he repented obviously, and you look at like the book of Adam and the revelation of Moses and those kind of things, and his promise, Yah's promise to him is that if you repent of your sins and live a life of penitence, then you too will be resurrected and share in this promise. It was kind of it was tension because he didn't say he would. He just said if you did. So I don't know. I can't answer that.
Where I was going with it kind of comes from the idea that the fact that Adam was called a son of God and none of the other guys after him are, as far as men. And it seems like the reason why is because he was a direct creation of God. He didn't have like a father that was a man. It was Yah created him. And then the angels as well, they were direct creations of God. So it seems like if Adam was called the son of God for that reason, and then the angels are called son of God for that reason. But then you have a difference here as far as men and angels, whereas when a man falls, if he can no longer be called son of God after he falls until he comes back to Yah, which would exclude these people we're referring to because they didn't repent. They were, they slept with the women, they did what they did, and doesn't seem like they, or at least it's not written that they ever repented. They were given harsh judgment, and that was the end of that. But as far as the angels, basically the idea that if it was a man, they couldn't have been called sons of God, but if it was an angel, they could have. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. I was just playing with that idea because Adam was called a son of God, and I felt like it was because he had no man father. His father was God. So.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but if there's nowhere else in all of Scripture or Bible, let me say Bible, I'll back that up, that angels are ever called sons of God, why in that particular verse were they called sons of God? Why didn't they just say angels? Because they say angels everywhere else in the Bible. That's the only place where people always try to insert angels instead of sons of God. And here again, you'd have to do the study and see how Paul Sandu comes up with his theory, and it just makes perfect sense because there's nowhere else in Scripture that angels are ever called sons of God. So why in that particular verse do we think it means angels? It just doesn't fit. It really doesn't.
Well, the actual you brought up a verse earlier when you were mentioning that guy who did that study that I thought was fascinating, and that particular verse, it says the morning stars and the sons of God. So the morning stars, you're translating that as, or you're interpreting that as angels. But if we look at Jubilees 2, we have the angels being created on day 1 and the stars being created on day 4. So it seems like they can't be the same one and the stars can't be the angels.
I see your point, but then again, are we saying that none of the stars are angels? Isn't it a possibility that some of them are angels and some of them are just stars and lights in the sky? Because my understanding is that many of the stars are actually angels.
That's a great question. I haven't really dove into this idea that far. It just came to me like during this talk, it just came to me. So I haven't really dug into it.
Well,
Well, I mean, like when it talks about the stars of heaven falling down to earth. I mean, seriously, and we make fun and we make jokes of this, but I mean, if these stars are actually planets and all that stuff, I mean, can you imagine the stars of heaven falling to earth? But if they're angels, then it makes a lot of sense that the angels would be cast down to earth, such as the third of the stars of heaven fell to earth. That to me just makes perfect sense that they're angels, because Satan took a third of the angels with him, and the Bible says a third of the stars of heaven fell to earth. So there's many, many different places where angels are represented as stars in the Bible.
here's another passage. Mary brought this up in Job 1:6. It says, Job 1:6, it says, and the day came to be that the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahuwah, and Satan also came among them. So I guess the question here, she says the angels are referred to as the sons of Elohim. And I guess that's the question, is that, so here is another passage where they do show up. Are those the angels there or not? When it says the
No,
sons
I think those are actually those special men that lived in a time before Adam and Eve and that creation. Because here again, why would it not say the angels presented themselves before the Father and Satan came among them? See, the sons of Elohim, the sons of God. Same thing. It's those special created men that were in a prehistoric time other than the timeline that we live in. And like I say, you don't have to believe it or anything, but it does answer a lot of questions that we have, and it will actually end a lot of discrepancies and discussions that people have. But because it is such a far-fetched idea, nobody wants to believe it. But like I said, you'd actually have to study, his teaching on that, because I'm just presenting just a little nugget of what he does.
Understand. I don't think it's a far-fetched idea at all. This is the first I heard it. And the reason I asked you, because, when you were talking about that, there were some, things that were popping up in my mind that I had read from even the occultists like Helena Blavatsky and others, but even the Greek mythology and so on and so forth about the golden age and, the former, the idea like Greek mythology that modern man is just but a shadow of the men that were in pre-existence beforehand. They were, the golden age, right? These very superior men. So that's why I asked that. I think that that's really interesting and fascinating. This is the first that this has been presented in this way in a biblical fashion. So I'd be curious. That's why I asked you to drop a link. And I think Michael did. I'll be interested to look into that further. And, that's one of the things that, the occultists, okay, so these are not people who love Yah, but they have a lot of hidden knowledge that they have talked about that in the post-mud flood years. I say like Helena Blavatsky was very pivotal in that, in bringing a lot of this to the surface, the things that had been hidden in the past, and talking about how there was this former age before the modern age when the people were far superior and they ruled over Atlantis, and they succumbed to corruption and magic and all sorts of things that was, like dark magic, all sorts of things that they became corrupted, and they fell as a result. So
Yeah, he goes in depth about all that, about that golden age, then the silver age, the bronze age, and like I said, it's a fascinating study, and he uses a lot of scripture to back up what he's saying, and it really is. I mean, and here again, don't think that I firmly believe everything he teaches, because he's still a Sunday guy and Jesus and all of that. I mean, he is a flat earther, so he's got part of it right, but this part of his study alone on the four ages of time, I think is just fascinating. And I mean, I think he's 99.99% there, because it just explains a lot of things that's unexplainable, like the Earth being, 5 billion years old and all that. It just makes sense, because if we think that the Father, the only thing he's ever done starts in the book of Genesis, man, we're putting the Father in an awful small box. That he's only been around and he's only done 7 or 8,000 years worth of time. No, it doesn't make any sense. But if we know that this world has been lasted for millions of years before with other beings that lived on it and had battles and destroyed it and had to be redone again, it fits right in with a lot of other things that just doesn't make any sense.
But yeah, and just so you know, John, that in case you weren't aware that I do believe that there were former untold creations beforehand, and that much of the I guess you call geology, or whatever. I don't want to say geological columns, but many of the things we see on this earth may be from those former times. And so I that's not far fetched at all for me to understand that there were former ages. And according to the legend of the Jews, they say that there were 6 former ages before ours, that ours is the 7th, which is really interesting because the 8th great day enters the new age. And what they say in the legend of the Jews is that what made ours so unique from all the others is that ours was the first to bring in the age of grace. And what may be, this may be, now talk about far-fetched ideas, is that the one thing that may have been included into our age that none of the other ages had was Yahusha HaMashiach, the Son. And you have to ask the question of what time was the Son begotten. And I have put forward the idea that the Son was begotten with the initiation of our age, and that has been a huge difference. So who knows what the other, according to this, the other 6 ages, or however many, were like. But it is interesting that in the Book of Enoch, when we get into the 8th great day, the end of the 10th week, that we are that the age of salvation for the biblical narrative comes to a complete end, and we enter all new weeks, right? Just week after week after week. The creations, it keeps happening all over again. The story, we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know if there's going to be a whole new creation that's going to fall into sin. And also to point out too, that if we are currently in the 8th great day, as I suspect, that's a trippy thought. That means that all of the biblical week, the 7,000 years is a different week. We're actually gazing on a past age. That's something that a lot of people can't wrap their heads around. But all right. Sorry. Well, good night, James. I won't say sorry to see you go. I'm always sad to see you go, but good night. He has to get going. And with that, I think we're kind of closing up shop tonight. And you guys can continue talking, but I'm going to officially close this. I do appreciate Josh for recording very much, being very, very loyal and coming and recording all these, and also Michael for taking part in the discussion and all the research he does. He did some phenomenal work tonight, and it sounds like Stephanie is a great research partner for him. And hope you guys enjoyed the 2 articles or papers I read on Paul as well. And so that'll be it tonight. I'm closing. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
I understand you guys can keep talking. That's where we're going to cut it off tonight. So, and if anybody needs to go to sleep or whatever, I want to be thoughtful of your time.
Oh, and no, I just wanted to say thanks for the Paul stuff, because I was having a big problem hanging out with this group when there was the Paul talk going on. Not that I hate anybody that feels like that, but just spiritually, I felt like it was wrong to be like, I don't know what the word is. I guess just fellowshipping with those that just talking crap about Paul, because I see him as like a great man of God that was doing a lot of good, and brought the gospel to people and stuff. So just hearing you give that testimony and tell how you had this transition in your mindset and everything, it made me feel real good. And like I actually fell off for a couple of weeks and stopped coming here. And then when I heard you were doing that, I jumped right back on, and I feel good now.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate hearing that, and I appreciate those of you who have stuck around. Despite, to me, for a lot of you who are able to stick around and understand that you disagree with some things on me, shows a lot of maturity. And I do think that obviously that I am coming back on board with Paul. That's going to upset some of the anti-Paul crowd that's been here. I don't want to upset you guys. It's not my intent. And just beforehand, I was upsetting the Paul crowd, and so, but I do think that there's a lot of people who have not forgiven me for taking a stand with Justin Best back in the day, and I was blacklisted from the community, and I'm not doing any of this to, get on my knees and kiss anyone's butt. It's simply because I have, prayed to Yah over this, and it's something I feel that is right, and I hope to mend some broken relationships with some people who basically cut communication with me over the issue, and we could talk about a person's maturity and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of people who have been in the movement for a while, they see what happens, and they see where this goes, and they just don't want that leaven in their lives. So I understand why a lot of people cut communication with me, and again, I hope I can mend some ties and bring more people together as a result of this. I have people tell me all the time, "I really like your stuff, Noel, but I can't get, you're wrong about Paul." That's like the biggest line for like the last 2 years that I've gotten from people.
Can you share any nuggets on Romans for next week?
Um, any nuggets on Romans? Uh, well, I think it's so the thing is that when I'm doing this study on Romans, you're going to come at this from two perspectives. One is that, well, three perspectives, I guess. One is that Paul was doing away with the law, and he was creating what we call the law of Christ, which is, the adherence to the law of Christ. I would like to see something written out, like, what is the law of Christ? So they'll you say, well, the Beatitudes or something like that. But it's a very abstract. It's kind of like to each his own. The desires of your heart and different cultures and stuff. Like, that's the law of Christ. That's what people who will push to say, well, he did away with the Torah, but he's pushing us to a better law that can better accommodate all these different Gentile nations. The other two perspectives is that the Torah is truth and that it's eternal, and that Paul was either a true prophet or a false prophet. And what I'm hoping to show in this study is that if you can, the anyone who's going to come at this and say, well, he's a false prophet, they're not going to listen to anything I say. But if you can look at Romans from the perspective that he's concerned that, and this is why Acts 15 is so important. Why I read it tonight before going into this. And in fact, if I ever do a study on Galatians, I'll probably go back and do Peter again, with the circumcision group, and his vision of the animals and the sheep, because Yaakov is the one saying it, that we are going to bring in these people who come in by faith, and then we will strengthen them week by week and teach them the law, and they'll come into a better understanding of it. And so if you can look at Romans from the perspective that Paul is establishing Torah, and he's saying, this is legit, guys, we're going to bring you into this, and you could see it as an instruction book for how people are being grafted back into Israel after Israel was divorced. They became the Goyim. They're being grafted back in, and this is how we're going to instruct you into his ways of righteous living, little by little. That's the way I'm reading Romans, and I'm finding it phenomenal. And it, I was just talking to Adam Fink this week. We had dinner together, and it turns out he's going through Romans too, and he just privately, and he's like, he does things by audiobooks. I can't do audiobooks. I have to read physical on paper, the words. But he's just like, he would get so frustrated. He'd be like, okay, turn it off. I can't take any more of this, because it is frustrating. It's really hard. His language use is very, very difficult. And it's like, what are you saying, Paul? Like, it sounds like it sounds like you just did away with circumcision. That's what it sounds like. And you have to really just dig into every sentence and be, okay, what is he saying? What is he saying? And it's actually very rewarding. The things that I have struggled with the most when I really struggled with it and pushed my way through it, I came out the other end and going, wow, that was really rewarding. So I can tell you guys, my only preview of Romans is that it was an exhaustive study just in chapter 1. And I'm thinking, oh man, I still got like 14 more chapters to get through. But it's going to be good. And what I'm doing differently is that, like, when Michael and I do the Aramaic Targum, we're just kind of speaking our way through this, and this is how Rob, Michael, and I did all our studies. And I feel that in a lot of ways, my studies are lost because they're just going on video. And I would like to get some serious, like, biblical commentary under my belt, like actual books. And so rather than just reading or just talking my way through it like I did with First Clement, I'm actually going to be giving you guys a PDF with my notes. And it takes me a lot longer to do that, obviously, to write things out, but it's something that will hopefully be longer lasting, and it can go out to more people and they could read the commentary and the whole perspective that I'm going with the Romans. There's many things you could look at in Romans about what he's saying. I'm not concerned about all those things. I'm only looking at it from the Torah observant perspective. Is Paul talking about Torah? Is he holding it up or not? And so that's what I'm dissecting in verse by verse by verse. So
I've got a question for you, Noel. Are you going to do any more studies with Zen Garcia in the future?
yeah, that's the plan. We had to cancel my last one because his son Justin and daughter-in-law Joy were having a baby the same week we were having a baby, which just so happened to be the week that we were scheduled. And Joy emailed me. She's like, "Okay, I know she's due. I know she's due any moment. Should we just rearrange this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I called it." And it turns out that we gave birth to the baby on the day I was supposed to go on with Zen. So I'm so glad we canceled it. So we need to, schedule some more studies up ahead. I think that's the plan. And Zen, as I told you guys before, Zen asked me personally on the phone to kind of fill in for what Rob Skiba is doing because he hasn't. But the other thing is that Zen is so busy now. I mean, he has guests after guests after guests who all want to go onto his show, and so he has a hard time, finding dates to bring me in. So we'll see what happens. Wendy
Yeah,
asked,
oh, I was just going to say that I had been following him and Rob Skiba, their teaching for a long time, and I was just shocked when he ended up dying. And I'm like, wow, this is terrible.
yeah. Wendy asked if I'm going to do Thursday nights. So for now, at this point in time, I'm not going to be doing Thursday nights for a while. I'm putting all my focus on Sabbath. Like, for example, I'm not just doing the study with Michael. I'm doing also a study beforehand. Like, we're going through Romans. I'd actually like to do the Gospel of Thomas. I know that's going to really maybe trip some people out, but I've had some breakthroughs with that. But my point is that instead of doing Romans on Thursdays, I'm doing on Sabbath, and so I'm kind of pushing all of my energy on doing these studies on Sabbath and making a big focus on that. And I am taking Thursdays off indefinitely for the future, just because we have a new baby and we're trying to get that all situated and so on and so forth.
And so I just wanted to ask a question about Epistle of Barnabas. So I heard you mention it, and I know some people that love the Torah, and they love Epistle of Barnabas too. And I was, at first when I read it, I was like, this is ridiculous. But I was thinking it doesn't. I don't think it outright says anything like don't keep the commandments the way they're written. It doesn't say eat unclean food. So because it doesn't say that, is there a possibility that it's just expounding on like a spirit of the letter type deal? Whereas you shouldn't eat swine, and you also, shouldn't be hanging out with people that are swine type deal.
I guess that's a possibility, isn't it? I mean, maybe the translation. I'm going by Michael Holmes' translation, which I think he does, writes some beautiful translations. But it seems like he's mocking the Jewish people. I mean, he seems to call them a different faith, in my opinion, from what I read. I mean, I just read that a couple weeks ago. Again, after reading a few years ago, he seems like he's saying that the Jews are no different than the people who worship idols, that they feel that like this whole sacrificial system that like Yah doesn't. I don't know. Like it seems like he was embarrassed by the Jewish people when I read it, and that he was trying to create a completely different uh, uh, faith. And um, I don't know. And maybe it's just a translation issue. It's really hard to tell. So if somebody can show me a good translation where he's like, I do support Torah, but I'm just trying to point to you to the spiritual instead of the physical, I'd love to see that.
Actually, there's the group I'm referring to who love Torah, and they think Barnabas is legit. It's called what do they call it? I have to get the name for you, but they actually made their own translation of Barnabas. They went through line by line, translated it, and they said they got a little better idea of what it was actually saying. But related to the vision that Peter got with the sheep, um, it almost seemed like Yah was saying, "Yeah, sit down with the pigs and this and that. You know, you can hang out with them. Maybe not as closely as maybe Barnabas was referring to, but that was the only thing I was seeing um, that might throw Barnabas into the trash, is that it was speaking against the lesson Peter was taught.
It could be. Yeah, I would be interested in seeing if you ever encounter their translation, be sure to send it my way. I'd be interested in seeing it because here's a reality behind these translations. I have pointed this out time and time and time again that this we often when you get into when you speak to the canon only people and they they will look at all these extra biblical books and they will point out one little line here or there and say, see, we got to throw this whole thing out. And the problem is the sin of the translators who often much do have an agenda. My wife, I was asking her to send me this article. She hasn't sent it to me yet, but she was explaining to me how she read that one translator of the Bible came out, and he said that he had to give up. He will never translate again. He had to walk away from it because he was exposing the corruption within and saying that translators have to purposely lie about a lot of stuff. And so I could see that there could be a whole agenda by translators of these books like Barnabas and Polycarp and others. I'd be interested to see the writings of Ignatius too. Because what if there's a conspiracy there? What if he was not as opposed to the law as those letters make out? That would have my interest. So I would love to see that and make a case for that.
Before you go, Noel, and I know your time is very precious, and you got a lot of fire or sticks in the fire, however you want to say it. But if you go to Paul Sandhu's site, I mean, he has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos. But if you look for four yugas, YUGAS or something, but the four timelines of history from the beginning, and just concentrate on that. It's not that really long of a study, so you may have time to do that. And I think you'll get a lot of good information from it.
Okay, cool. And so, okay, so Desmond, you just put in Snyder's group right there, and that's where I'll find that information.
Yeah, he authored it, Jackson Snyder, and they had a bunch of people from the group help with it. But I think when you look up the book, he's the author, I think, officially or something like that.
So I'll give you guys a really quick example of a big breakthrough I had on the Gospel of Thomas recently. And I was putting it in the deep text room, and it was by a French translator who did a phenomenal job on the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and the Gospel of Philip. I mean, his translations are the most beautiful I've ever seen. I mean, they make all the others out there like total junk. And there's with all the Nag Hammadi texts and stuff like that, like it's almost like I think they almost don't want to make good translations out of them. Like there's I don't know, like maybe it's a taboo thing in the world of the scholars and so on and so forth. They don't want to identify with them. But he made the case. He showed that the most so what happens is anytime you bring up the Gospel of Thomas, everyone is like, "Oh, but what about that androgyny thing where, where Jesus says that Mary has to become a man to enter the kingdom?" It's that bombshell in there because Peter's like, he says, "Why are you giving information to Mary? She's a woman. She can't enter the kingdom." And then Jesus said, I'm saying Jesus here, but he says, "Well, yeah, but don't worry, Peter. She'll become a man, and all women have to become a man, right?" So people are like, "See, we're throwing Thomas out. This is a ridiculous book." Well, he comes along and says, "Well, for whatever reason, all the translators, he doesn't say purposefully, but he says they've all translated it wrong in order to make it more what they deem it Gnostic, because they're trying to make it provocative, and they have these agendas to make it very Gnostic." And he's coming along and saying that the word that is used there is not the word for man; it is the word for human. So get this, guys. Peter or Kepha is saying to Yahusha, he's saying, uh, she can't enter she can't enter the kingdom. She's a woman. And then he turns the table. He doesn't agree with all these other translations say that Jesus or Yahusha agreed with Peter, where no, he turns the table, which is exactly what he does. And he says, "No, Kepha, she will become fully human, and you have to become fully human to enter the kingdom." So in a way, he's turning on him because now the tension is, will Kepha become fully human? And that is a totally different translation, a very different idea than what we are presented with the Gospel of Thomas. It changes everything. And this is what I'm saying with all these translations, that man, these translators, we put all the stock in what they have to say, and we have to, because I don't speak Syriac or Latin or Greek or the Ethiopian languages or all the different Hebrew, Aramaic. I don't speak all those languages. I have to trust that they're being honest in giving this stuff to me. So yeah, thank you, Desmond, for sending that. I will look at that. That will be really fascinating, because that will be a game changer if they can present a translation that is accurate.
Yeah, he's basically like a professional in translating Greek, and he was one of the first guys that got me to realize that the Bible's not inherent. And he just started going through the Greek and just showing me all these things where it's translated one way and it doesn't really mean that. And I was just like, whoa.
Well, if he does a study on Polycarp or Ignatius too, that would be fascinating, because those are some of the questions I had, because Ignatius is like, he seems to really hate the law, seems to be very much against it. But again, that could be a sin of the translators too. So
Oh, and just a little thing, if any of you guys are interested, there's this guy named One Safara. I forget what his last name is. Um, but he's creating a version of Esther, and he's taken like the Alpha text, the Old Latin, the Septuagint, the Masoretic. He's got like all these versions he's putting together, and what he's done is he's created um, like a parallel with all of them next to each other, and he lays it out real nice, so it's very easy to see the variance. Like he puts the words right on top of each other, and you can see where a word's missing really easy, or he bolds it when the words differ. And it's a neat format he set up for looking at variance. But I just watched his part 3 on Esther today, because he's only done one book so far, Esther. But he plans on doing like the whole Torah and everything. And I posted it earlier today in here in the general voice chat. But if any of you guys are interested in that kind of stuff, it was really neat just seeing the different variants. And the cool thing about it is he was explaining how he was choosing which variant he was going to go with, or what they were trying to mean. And the reasoning was so sound. Like, I'm trying to give an example. Um, so he'd have one version that just says she, he, and another version that has a name. And he would go through and show how when you're in the Septuagint, there are certain names which are actually a word, a noun in Greek. So the Greek put the noun in there, not realizing it was a name. And when you look at the Hebrew, you can see it's definitely a name, but it just so happens to be pronounced the same way as a Greek noun. And they would just put in the noun like there was this one guy named Adolpha or something like that, and or Dolphina. And that's actually the same word for brother in Greek. And it was just really cool to see, to like really put eyes on it and see that they weren't lying, they weren't corrupting the text on purpose. They just didn't realize it was a name. They had only been familiar with that Greek word, so they translated it like that. And it kind of helped me see better how these errors get into there. And the way he laid it out, it really, you could critique it a lot easier and say, okay, this is definitely the version that has the right word here, because these other ones you can see why they changed the word or why they left it out. Like they have good reasons for why. Sometimes it was already mentioned previously and there's no need to repeat it again, things like that.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I'm going through the document right now, Barnabas, and he translates it. So I'm going to chapter 9 where he talks about the piggish people and the octopi people and the rabbit people or the pedophiles or something like that. Uh and I am a little confused on how he's coming up with these different character traits. He's like character traits of animals, but it is interesting. So he translates it here in chapter 10. So Moshe spoke of these three teachings about food in a spiritual sense, but the people, in accordance with the lust of their flesh, receive them as being only about eating. Now, see, that's the big question here because it seems like most translators will say, but the people, in accordance with the lust of their flesh, receive them as being about eating. So that's a big difference there, whether Barnabas is saying it was never about eating, or if it was about eating, but also a spiritual sense on top of that. So those are the questions I have.